Good evening. My name is Mike Mortel, and I'm the city attorney. We have a little bit of a unusual circumstance tonight because both our chair and vice chair, who are normally here, couldn't be here tonight, so we don't have someone to run the meeting. So what I think I'll do is start the meeting and go through a couple things, and then one of the things we're going to do tonight is a reorganizational meeting, so we'll get there and we'll talk about that as we go on. In any event, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask if the clerk will please call roll.
Chair Strom. Board Member Bromfield.
Present.
Board Member De La Vega.
Here.
Board Member Lorene.
Here.
Board Member Massing. Board Member Mathers. Board Member Vitale.
Here.
The next thing is if you could stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next matter on our agenda tonight is the annual board reorganization meeting. A couple options. First, I'm sorry, before we even get into that, I can't have you guys vote until we swear in our new members of our board. We have 3 new members to the board that are just starting, and if the board members could please stand up and raise your right hand. Not you, Christina, because you're not new. Sorry. Anyway, do you, and I'll say to you each at the end individually, but do you solemnly swear that you will support, honor, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and the state of Florida, and that you are duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state of Florida and under the charter of the city of Stuart, and that you will well and faithfully perform the duties of a member of the city of Stuart local planning agency on which you are about to enter, so help you God? Ms. Broomfield?
I do.
Ms. Lorene?
I do.
Ms. Vitale?
I do.
Thank you and welcome aboard. Now, before we start this annual board reorganization meeting, is there anybody that has experience running boards before okay? So Kelly and Jackie both do, and Christina's been around as well. What I need now is a motion to appoint someone, and by the way, you could appoint someone that's not here too, but they still wouldn't be here to run the meeting, as chair for the following year. And if there's somebody that wants to do it or wants to volunteer, you're welcome to tell the rest of the board, and if you get a motion, we'll move forward.
Oh, so Ryan it's over for Ryan?
Well, his term technically ended in December, and then we have to have it at the next board meeting in January, and that got canceled, so this is technically the next meeting. So his term would be over. He could be extended if somebody motioned for Ryan, or someone new could do it, and even, no matter what, Ryan's not going to be the chair today, because he's not here.
Okay.
So I'm looking
Anybody
for a
wanna
motion
be
to
the
appoint
chair?
someone as chair.
From my understanding, it's a procedural.
It's just it's reading this
Yeah.
piece of paper that I'm reading right now.
If no one else wants to do it, I'm happy to do it. I've done it
So I
many
need a
times.
motion.
Okay,
to
I
appoint
make a
Kelly.
motion that
And I need a second.
I second.
Having a motion and a second, are there any comments of any board members before we vote? Seeing none, is there any members of the public that would like to comment on Kelly's service as chair tonight? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? My job here is done.
Okay.
Now I'm going to ask Kelly to move to the center seat,
Okay.
and if you would be so kind, I think you have an agenda, but if you don't,
I
I can
do.
see this one.
She was kind enough to give me a thorough one.
So we're on page 2,
Okay.
approval of agenda, which is that one down there.
City Attorney, we still need a vice chair.
Well, that's right. So now as the chair, your next agenda item will be to have somebody appoint a vice chair. So you're looking for a motion for vice chair.
Does anybody have a motion for a vice chair?
I'll nominate Ms. De La Vega.
I accept. Do we have to vote? Yes.
Are you okay with that?
Fine, I'm
Okay.
good.
We have a motion and a second.
I second.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
We also need to ask for public comment. I know it's a.
Oh, sorry. Does anybody have any comments?
Commissioner Campy, you have any comments? Just making sure. And now we have a vice chair as well, so we would move on to the approval of the agenda. I'm also going to be handing each one of you your oath. If you could just
I think I have one. Oh, I have one.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what agenda she gave me. You have the agenda?
I do.
Okay, so yeah,
Okay.
do that, that's great.
All right. So the next would be to approve the minutes from the December 10th meeting. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes that were provided before? Does anybody want to make a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Everyone in favor? Public comment?
Oh,
Everyone in favor?
aye.
Okay, wonderful. Okay,
The next thing, too, before we approve the agenda, as I mentioned before, we were going to talk about moving the agenda, so we're going to switch and adopt number 2 to come first and number 1 to go second, so that the people that are here have an opportunity to do that.
okay, do we need to approve that?
You would normally approve the agenda based on that, or you need a motion from somebody to switch them, because I don't have the authority to do it.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to switch the agenda items?
I make a motion that we switch the agenda items so that we can get to number 2 first.
Does anybody have a second?
I second.
Any public comment on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
And then, since this is also your first meeting, normally at this point, we have comments from the public on non-agended items. So it's not on the
Right.
issues that are before us tonight. It could be somebody wants to talk about something else, and then comments from the board, and then we'll get in the meeting.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items tonight? Okay, fantastic. We don't have to vote on that, right? No, we can just move on. Wonderful. Comments from board members on non-agenda agenda items. Anyone?
No.
Fantastic. Okay, now, do we move on to the items before us?
We would go to number 2, and we hand it off to our very capable staff.
Fantastic.
Tonight it's Tom Reeds who will be handling this matter for us.
Okay,
Yes, good evening, LPA. Tom Reed, Senior Planner for the record. This first item is called Four Winds at St. Lucie. It is a rezoning from R1 zoning to R2 zoning. The applicant is Duet Price. The company name is 245 St. Lucie LLC and 257 Four Winds LLC. So the subject site is on the eastern boundary of the city limits. It's on St. Lucie, off from St. Lucie Boulevard, in between Four Winds Drive and Monterey Avenue. It's consists of 2 existing parcels equaling 0.75 acres. Both parcels have an existing home on them now that are being inhabited. And Mr. Price, I believe, is renting both of them at this point. So if we start with the future land use, it's low-density residential. This supports the actual single-family dwelling that exists on the site now. The existing zoning is R1 single-family. Mr. Price proposes tonight to change this zoning to R2. Now, the possibilities with the R2 zoning start with the single-family option. This is an example or a site layout of 5 lots, of which could be developed if approved. Or if the zoning is changed tonight, Mr. Price would have to come back, apply for his construction permits. The application would be reviewed by staff, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows that tonight's rezoning is not approving any dwelling or any structure at this point. It's just simply a rezoning. Once it's rezoned, the applicant, Mr. Price, can apply for for instance, a 2-story cottage home that would meet the R2 single-family setbacks of 25 in the front, 7.5 feet on the side, and 15 in the rear. As you can see, there's more than enough room in the front and back on a 2-story option. He could apply for a single-family 1-story structure that would have to hold those same setbacks. However, he could also apply for a single-family structure with only a 15-foot front setback if his design included a porch along the entire front facade. It's also important to note that the subject property was originally platted as 50-foot wide lots. As you can see here in red, these are the original lots of record that were platted in 1925. Also, staff has created and the commission has approved an ordinance that provides or allows for a minimum width of R2 lots of 50 feet. And this is for the single-family option only. And again, this would match the underlying existing platted lot of record. This is the ordinance that I was referring to. It's ordinance number 2454, 2020. It was designed or created for R2 and R3 50-foot wide single-family lots. You can see that the minimum lot area is 5,000. The minimum lot width, as I mentioned earlier, and actually what the existing lot of records are, they are in fact 50 feet wide. Maximum impervious surface remains the same at 50%. And then again, the setbacks that I went over earlier are 25 in the front, 5 feet on the side for a 1- and 2-story. Actually could do 3 stories that would hold 7.5 feet. Minimum rear setback is 15 feet, maximum building height 35 feet. And that again is for the R2 and R3, which has been approved and has been codified and it exists in our code. With that, I want to hold off recommendation. Yes. And Mr. Freeman.
Chair, Kevin Freeman, Planning Development Director for the record. I'd just like to add a bit of clarification to the proceedings tonight. Tonight is a hearing before the local planning agency. It's an advisory board. This, whatever approval or denial, will go through to the City Commission for further consideration after tonight's hearing. So the rezoning does not occur at tonight's hearing. It's a recommendation made on that. If I could also clarify that this has been reviewed against the city's comprehensive plan. It does comply with the city's comprehensive plan. The low-density future land use is appropriate. That particular land use allows R1A, R1, or R2 zoning to be applied to that. The controlling dimension to that future land use is the maximum density which is allowed on that by right. So everybody in this room has a lot in the city, has a future land use. Under that land use, they have a right to develop a certain amount of development on there. And in this case, the right of the low-density future land use allows a right of up to 6 units on that particular area. Now, what we're seeing tonight is a move that the City Commission has encouraged by amending their local city development regulations to allow property owners to take advantage or to utilize the underlying lots of record, which underlie every single, most lots within the city. They're historic lots. In this case, in this particular street, there are 50 feet wide lots. Those comply with the City Commission's movement to promote the development of single-family housing and to encourage that. The applicant has come forward tonight and wants to use the existing underlying lots to do that. It does comply with the R2 zoning. It would not comply with the other zonings available in that future land use. So, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah. With that, that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here to give his presentations. If we can,
So can we ask you questions now, or do we wait for him to?
It's at the discretion of the board. A lot of times the staff will, or I mean, the other presentation will answer some of those questions, but if you want the question answered now, it also gives the presenter an opportunity to know what's on your mind, so maybe you want to do it that way.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Okay?
If you want to go ahead and ask, that's fine.
Okay, so on the next street over, those are already zoned R2. Is that correct on Sailfish?
yes. I'll just pull up the zoning map so that we can all
Yeah,
see.
so Sailfish is zoned R2, and it's duplexes. Is that
Right, so
correct?
the proposed change is circled in, or squared in red, and it currently exists as R1. The proposal is to change to R2.
Yeah.
R3 exists immediately to the east, and then there's an R2 lot that currently exists on the other side of Monterey.
And then where are the duplexes? Isn't that Sailfish?
Duplexes are right here.
Right there? And then
Yes.
the big apartment buildings are next to those, are right there?
Are here.
So,
R3.
and then all of the other houses that are on this street are all single-family, and they're all on 50-foot lots or 100?
I'll let the applicant, in the applicant's presentation, he goes over that very thoroughly. He's very
Is there
familiar.
any interest in turning the whole street R2?
Well, I think that's an option that property owners would be available to property owners.
Because if you have R2, then you can do it or not do it.
Correct,
Right? That's
yes.
you either
Yeah.
stay on your 100-foot lot,
It
or
doesn't,
you
yes. It
basically.
doesn't mandate that you go and develop a single-family, residential on a 50 feet wide lot. It just gives you that flexibility to do so.
Okay, all right, I think that's what I've got.
With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
You got the slides?
That way? Okay. All right, good afternoon, Planning and Zoning Board. My name is Dwight Price. As he mentioned, I'm the managing member for the two LLCs, myself and my wife own this property. The piece of property, I will tell you, it was about 8 years ago. I had to move into Stewart, and we ended up living in that community for a couple of years before we moved out. And in the meantime, while I lived there, I've always had a plan of what I envisioned this community to be. And I see this neighborhood as what is called the missing middle. You know, it's kind of where you got the homes that are back in the 50s, a little dated. There's just a missing piece off that window, and this is a sizable piece of property that I was able to acquire, and I've kind of maintained over time trying to figure out the best way to do this and make it work. I've been in front of staff many times just trying to go through what I can't do and look at different options, and as time has gone by, I feel this is what would make it more compatible. So with that, move forward. So to give you an understanding, so City Hall, is there a pointer on this?
Yeah, green.
Okay, so this is where we are right here, City Hall. The site is directly east on the very outer boundary of, if anyone's familiar with Snug Harbor, it's literally right at the gate going into Snug Harbor. This particular property is, it's interesting because what I found is that this is county, and the city just has this little sliver. It makes for an interesting tale as to how developments occurred over there. The site itself is located off of St. Lucie Boulevard. This is St. Lucie Boulevard to the south, Four Winds Drive that runs north-south, St. Lucie east-west. So this right here is the site proper. Earlier, you were trying to figure out where we were. This is Fisherman's Village. This is a condominium product. These are apartments here. This is multifamily R3, and then the rest of this is single family, and we have another multifamily R3, and then everything back here is multifamily R3. So that's just like a quick overview, and we'll go into it a little further in the presentation. On the property for this meeting, I had to notify residents, and we had to go 300-mile radius. To give you an example, most of the times I apply for, an application to see who I'm sending out to residents. You have maybe 10, 15 in a residential community. I had over 80 letters I had to send out within 300 feet of this site. So that just goes to show the density that is around this neighborhood and the location. Present site conditions, this is just to give you an idea of what the property is today. We've got, like they mentioned earlier, single-family home. This sits on the corner of St. Lucie West and Four Winds. So this is a corner property. Same here, this is a northeast view, north view. This is looking from the south, from the north looking southeast of the site. Here again, same thing, St. Lucie Boulevard. This is looking directly north at the property, and this is at the rear of the property. An intriguing fact about this site too is that it's bordered in the rear by a 10-foot right-of-way easement that runs the length of this area. So that goes back to this is something we'll go through later as we deal with the plat. So that is actually an access easement that will allow someone to go in as far as the, right-of-way. Then as you look at the rest of the single-family homes, you've got one here. This is 257 Four Winds. That's the amount of frontage of that single-family home that's sitting there on those properties. So this was a home that I lived in the beginning when I lived here for a couple of years, and I still have that home. And like you said, over time I've rented it, and one of the things I've done is just, it was basically in the hopes of trying to figure out how I would redevelop this site. If it's in any map, going back again, this is kind of like an overview of our surrounding uses. As we mentioned before, multifamily, everything in blue is multifamily. What I did have incorrect, I had this as single family, but it's actually multifamily. So all of this should be blue. Blue to the north, blue to the direct east of the site. So my site is in red. So that's all multifamily zoned, and that is the underlying zoning there today. Close-up of it, once again, we've got duplex, multifamily R3, multifamily R3, multifamily R3, and this is my site here, which is R1. So it's kind of, over time with the zone, it's kind of created an island for this where you're surrounded by two very dense uses, and this is zoned as an R1. This is the zoning map, which was also shown earlier by Kev to kind of go, just to give you, this is the official city's zoning map, which shows just kind of exactly what I'm talking about. Everything in light yellow is multifamily, and that's the existing zoning today in that neighborhood. This site here, based on the map, it's R1, and these are all R1 50-foot lots that sit behind the property. This map I thought was interesting. So this is also an R3 zoning map that was developed by the city of Stewart to kind of give an idea of all the multifamily sites you have within the community. This is, kind of gives you all the general dispersions of the R3s. This is the location of that site. So here we have R3, and then here's the site sitting right here, surrounded on all three sides, or all four sides, by R3 multifamily zone. The existing neighborhood fabric, as I mentioned before, going back, this is just to give you a general idea. If no one has not been to the site, to give you an idea, this is a multifamily home, residential apartment community that sits to the south of the site, condominium project that sits to the west of the site. This is the multifamily 6-unit apartment property that sits directly north, abutting the property. This is also another picture in the corner. So this is also Four Winds in St. Lucie, where you have that condominium product. This is that same 6-unit multifamily R3 that we were discussing. And these are the single-family residential homes that lead into what is Snug Arbor West and Four Winds. So this is, these are regular single-family homes where basically the site is buffered by a multifamily, but then it goes, the separation is kind of backwards as to what it really should be. Now, once again, looking at the existing property, existing neighborhood, once again, this is looking down Four Winds, same thing here. This is looking towards the south, looking into the apartment complex, community to the south. This is the site as you're looking towards the south. These are, once again, this is inside, at the end of the street, this is towards the very north of the product. It dead ends into Four Winds. And in that community, you have condominium products and single-family homes. Even though it's zone multifamily, they are single-family homes with more of a zero lot line product that are, this is what's in that community. One of the things as I look at this, I would say keep an eye and kind of look and see just the vernacular and what's happening inside this neighborhood. And once again, now going on as we talk about the existing neighborhood, here we have directly to the south, to the east, on the corner at Four Winds, and this is also along St. Lucie Boulevard. This is an R3 zone, and this is basically a multifamily duplex that sits on that site, which is basically a transient use that's being utilized in there at this time, which allows for VRBO, which at times it sleeps up to 8, so you have really dense use. This is really really dense use on these properties that surround what is zoned R1 today. This is the other neighborhood properties that sits to the rear, 50-foot lot, 50-foot lot, single family, 50-foot lot, single family, 50-foot lot, single family, and a duplex unit that also sits on the opposite side of Monterey that butts along St. Lucie. And in this one, they actually have a cool deal where they have a main house and a cottage home that's situated on that site. So, as you look at everything, it's like you have 50-foot lots, but you have 1-for-1 as it relates to units per count per bit. The future land use, as was pointed out by staff, as you can see, is low-density residential. This site here is zoned low-density residential. And the request that's in front of you today is to go from R1 to R2. With the R1 to R2 zoning, one of the things that, as Kevin and everyone has explained, the goal is not to change and go outside of your future land use plan, because to your point, it's like, for this neighborhood, you want to keep it in a certain zone. Granted, with the R3s around, you'd be like, well, why wouldn't you go to R3? Because that would be more cohesive and more compatible for the neighborhood. But in sticking with what I envision for this neighborhood and keeping in line with the future land use plan, opted to look at R2 zoning, which works perfectly fine for me for what I think would work here. As was also pointed out, this is the plat map that was done in 1925-26. So basically, this is, I sit on the Historic Preservation Board for Morgan County, and for me, I look at the historic value of what these communities are, and this, I think, was a, Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So basically, here we have the existing lots of record plat map, which at this time, 50-foot lots. So basically, this whole community at one time were 50-foot lots of record, but over time and development, things have changed. However, even existing today, we still have, a lot of the homes within that community that are on 50-foot lots. This is, like Kevin and everyone explained, is more of a conceptual idea to let someone understand what could occur on this site as I look at this once we get a rezone. Based on the 50-foot lot requirements and the zoning requirements that are there, we've gone through and just looked at different aspects as to what could be done on the site. As with everything, this is completely conceptual, but this is basically based on the land development code, what are going to be the limits of what can be done within those sites and setbacks. This is also give you an idea of neighborhood compatibility. So we talk about the 50-foot lot widths. Once again, we go down, we've got in total about 17 home sites, 8 of them 50-foot by 130, 3 of varying widths. Overall, there's 23 platted lots just in this immediate vicinity, with at least 19 of them platted as 50-foot lots. To your point, Ms. Christina, that's kind of what's in this neighborhood today. The conceptual vision that I see, and that's why I mentioned earlier when you looked at Snug Arbor West, is, the vernacular is kind of, my vision is seeing, taking a little bit of what's happened in Snug Arbor West on a smaller scale and creating that here on this corner, because as people are going in, my goal is to create an entry that as you come down going towards Snug Arbor, or you're going into Snug Arbor West and going into that community, it helps to change and create more of a more welcoming neighborhood factor versus what is there today. I mean, everything is really dense with the high condominiums and all that, so this is more of hopefully bringing it down to a more walkable and community feel in neighborhood. So this is conceptually what I envision that could happen there on a single family home site. Conceptually, this is to give you a general idea of that particular property. So here you have, like I said, the single-family homes, you got your corner, and as you go in, you got 5 units. So these could be what could be that site there or there. So there's just different options that are available to look at here and in a single-family concept. So this is, conceptually what I envision that could happen here on this site. And this is looking from the north, looking south. The other one was looking on the very corner of Four Winds and St. Lucie, just having that direct northeast view. And, so that we can go on, that's it, and that's all I have. And if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
And at this point, obviously, the board has the right to ask him questions, and also we would go back to Tom for any rebuttal if necessary, and then thank you, Kelly, for volunteering today to be the guinea pig. Approach you.
Okay.
Once the board finishes asking its questions,
Okay.
they take public comment, and these are the people that have filled out a comment
Oh,
card.
okay.
Are we voting before comment now, or are we not?
No, I'm just, you guys can discuss and deliberate, do whatever you want to do before, whatever. And I wanted to mention to everybody here, if there's anybody else that hasn't filled out one of these blue cards that would like to speak tonight, please do so. There's some here, and the clerk has some, or see me, and I can give you one, and we'll give them to them, so that everybody gets a chance to be heard.
And the public comment, there's a time limit?
It's 3 minutes.
Okay. First, I would have us ask questions first. So my question is, under the R1 current designation, if you had that, following the model of what you want to build, how many homes could be fit there with the current zoning?
4.
4. And so under the R2, then you could have the 5? Is that
Correct.
what you're looking for?
Correct, because it's platted, at this point, there's a 2-step process. If I had to go to the 4, I had to replat, which is another process, cost factors.
Yeah, of
And
course.
so, so basically, yes, going to what is underlying today to R2 would allow me to do the 5 single-family
Okay.
homes.
And then the R1 only allows for single families, whereas the R2 allows for both single family and duplex?
And
Is
duplex.
that-
That is correct. That is my understanding.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions?
R1 allows for single family with a detached building behind.
That is correct.
R2 on a 50-foot lot allows for a single family with you can't
Detached.
build a duplex on a 50-foot lot, is my understanding.
No, you can't build a
correct?
duplex on a 50-foot
You
lot.
can
You'd
build
have to be a
duplex, but you
75
keep
feet.
your 100-foot lot.
Yeah.
So it's 200 feet?
I have 250 feet.
250 feet, so your choice, you could build one more house if you go to R2.
At this point, that's correct. If I went to R2, I would basically be able to go to either the 5 single family or 6 or 5 single family, or I could do, based on density, 8, but because of the lot width requirements of 75, you would probably only be able to fit about 6
First of all-
units, so basically 3 duplex
Yeah,
units,
and I
correct?
have to say that I live in a neighborhood just like this that is R2 with 50-foot lots, and I have just done this in the past week. So I understand living in this neighborhood. You're surrounded by multifamilies, so I don't see that as a problem. What I do see as a problem as we build newer houses in these small lots is that we're building all the way to the setback, so there's no green space.
See, but once again, this is basically what you saw there was a conceptual review of what can happen on the site based on your setback requirements. It all is going to come down to the design at the end of the day where, yes, if you were to maximize it per code, yes, you could do up to 5 foot. You do get rid of green space, but you also have a land coverage ratio, right? I think it's like a 50% and
Yeah,
all that. So that's
50%.
going to also dictate. And at the end of the day, everything that would happen on this site would have to meet the current City of Stewart codes, land development code. So there's nothing that I'm trying to do that's outside of that. I'm just trying to
Right.
stick within the fabric
Unfortunately,
of what's available.
the ones that are filling up the lots are meeting the,
Yes, I'm not a fan.
yeah. Okay,
So-
thank you.
I just want to clarify so that I totally understand. Currently, we can have 4 single-family homes on the lot. With this proposed rezoning, we could switch that to 5 single-family homes or 3 duplexes.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
3 duplexes? Because duplex takes 75 feet?
Yeah. Okay, so the duplexes would have to hold 75-foot width. If he has 250 total, that would be 225 of the 250 for 3 duplex
Okay.
units.
3 duplexes or 5?
Or 5 single-family.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
So I have a question though, because I've heard both the number 5 or potentially 6 single family. So which is it?
So let me clarify that a bit further. So the future land use provides a density of 8 units per acre. With the 0.75 acres we have, that equates to 6 units available for that future land use. However, that could only be achieved if the applicant went to a PUD, a planned unit development, and had some special agreement both with the LPA and then the city commission to do that. It's more complex, and there's a number of requirements on that. So what we really, when we negotiated this move with the applicant, we went through the allowances or what he has in place. So he has that underlying availability for 6 units on this land area, and that's the same density as everybody else in that area. So the commission, and we identified, a bit of a backstory here, but we identified as staff that there was a sort of barrier in the city to allowing the development of single-family homes on historical lots of record. And we looked through the city, and specifically in the R2 zoning districts, primarily, and the future low-density future land use, there are a tremendous amount of 50-feet lots. And we have really, if you look at the streets that you might be more attracted to when you drive down them or when you walk down them, most of the properties on those lots are based on 50-feet lots. And because of the requirement of being smaller, there's more potential for more architectural embellishment. There's more availability for people to go and purchase something because it's obviously less costly to buy a smaller home. And the commission really wanted to move towards making more availability of single-family dwellings in the city. So we did recommend to the applicant that he went this way, that he looked at the R2 precisely because of the underlying lots of record, which are 50 feet, so which the commission identified through their zoning change to be the ones that we would, as staff and the commission, support a move towards single-family development. So the controlling aspect of this is always the comprehensive plan, and this is in compliance with that. It's actually not really feasible to utilize the whole density that's allowed on the zoning because of the restrictions on the zoning that are placed over that. So I hope that ramble sort of answered some question.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand that it could potentially be 6, but then that would require additional special permission, or would just the rezoning then say you could do the 6?
Well, this could, if the applicant chose, move to 3 duplex. And that would be some, yes,
Understood,
yes,
understand. But I'm
yes,
saying
yeah.
I'm thinking from the single-family perspective.
That would be the
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, single family, if you went 6 single family, that would be a PUD, yes.
Yeah, so basically, to help answer that question, the reason why I am going to the underlying use in the plat is to go through, it is a tough process to go through here, right? And it's also costly, which basically adds to your cost, which adds to your cost of the home, which makes them not as attainable as you would like them to be. So then if I did want to go to the 6, I have to go through a replat, which means I would have to go through another process, through the replatting process, which includes coming up and spending a lot of money in architectural fees and design just to see how I would fit 1 extra unit, which probably will not be it's not worth the cost.
Okay.
So at this point, it's looking at what I have in front of me, which is 5 platted lots.
5 or 8?
Or, no, not 8.
No, 8,
No,
3 duplexes.
3
and 6.
duplexes, right, yeah, but even to go to that option too, I'm still replatting, so it's just, I've got to look at those options, but I got to do it one at a time. My first one is getting the rezone, looking at what we can do, and I already, like you said, the limits of what is set within the code between the 50-foot or 75-foot duplex, there's only so much you can do within that space.
I have a question. Is there a way that it can be R2 but not have duplexes?
Yes, R2 with the 5 single-family homes on the platted lots of record.
Yeah, see, but,
My question
Oh, is there a
can we-
condition? No.
Can we set it like that?
see, well, and that's one of the things why I'm doing a rezone versus a PUD, because this is basically the simplest way. What you're explaining right now is setting a condition, which I guess you guys can answer better than me. You know, I don't think that's something that can occur with a straight rezone. If I'm coming in for a PUD,
Tom, why don't you answer the question?
yeah.
Right. The code allows for the option of the single-family or two-family. I don't know if staff are making any kind of conditions that would, on a private property owner for
If
something that the code allows.
If I can chime in, there is not a code in the city of Stewart that's called R2 without duplex. So if it's R1, it's R1, if it's R2, it's R2, and if it's R3, it's R3. So, and then whatever the code allows in those uses is what the application is tonight. If this was a PUD, you could put those restrictions in.
Anybody, any other questions from the board?
So that's probably what your problem is that your neighbors are scared that you're going to build duplexes.
Well, you see, at the end of the day, it's one of those things where when you look at the site, let's go back, okay? The neighbors are scared, but I'm also more fearful of what occurs because I've got this multifamily zone. This is R3. This is a much higher density, right? And I've got these properties here that are also R3. So regardless of what will occur here, this is the only duplex that sits on this whole road. And then I have this duplex that's a transient use where I'm saying 8 people a night in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. That's the type of stuff that can occur in an R3 zone that I'm trying not to have, right? So that's what occurs here today in the neighborhood. So when I'm looking at doing here and keeping within the load zone is keeping it, you know, compatible with the neighborhood and the uses that are there today, which are 50-foot lots of record. And then if I did want to do a duplex, it's basically keeping in kind what's there. There's already a duplex there. I'm not setting a record. I'm not trying to change anything else that's not there today.
Okay. We have no other comments, then we'll move to the public request to speak. I'll just go in order that they are listed here, which is first Marcella Kimblor.
Listen.
Thank you. Good evening. Marcella Camblor. My office is here in 47 West Osceola Street. I just want to say that, you know, I am a firm believer that zoning should stand on itself. I mean, our entire code, the rules of our city are zoning, and they're equal for everyone. And if someone has, you know, R1 or R2 or R3, everyone that has that should be able to do the same. Which is why I'm supportive of the process that staff did. I think Mr. Price proved, you know, beyond any doubt that there's a pattern around him of zoning that created an island of R1 for his piece. I honestly thought he was shooting for R3 because he's surrounded by R3. I was surprised to see that he was going for R2, which allows a more compatible use. I was here in front, Ms. La Vega, with the previous board. Congratulations, by the way. Just in November, December, when this board spearheaded encouraging the types of things that, that Mr. Price did, and hoping that that simple change would start to bring forward people doing this. And so I commend you. I think it is a great thing for the city. He mentioned the missing middle. This will create, you know, the type of housing that is not part of a gated subdivision in suburbia or, you know, or condos that we're seeing coming around the city. So I'm in support of the rezoning. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcella.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Roger Bonneau.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Roger Bernat, and I live in Snug Harbor. There's a few things I have a concern about. One is the developer himself. I noticed that I was wondering if he had gotten a permit to destroy the sidewalk that's in front of his house, and that runs along that street. what has happened over the years is people have had growth going over that. And if I'm not mistaken, the city is responsible for sidewalks, isn't that right, Mike?
So the sidewalks are normally in the right of way, so it's the city sidewalk.
Right.
depending. I don't know about this one.
Right. So right in front of his house, if you looked at one of those pictures, you'd see his sidewalks all torn up. And someone had come along with a sledgehammer, busted up that sidewalk, and put in some plants. Okay, and so now, it makes now well,
We can wait till you oppose the.
so now it makes a problem for kids that are waiting for the bus there. We have a big enough problem with no crosswalk there for kids and for people crossing over to go over to Fresh Market. But that in itself is one thing. The other thing too is there is a reason for zoning, and zoning should be stuck to. And the forefathers of our great city built and had a plan, and that plan, I think, should stay. You know, and if everything he has showed us today is all conception, well, everybody has a dream. Sometimes that dream becomes a person's nightmare. And I believe that the zoning should remain the same as it is right now. There's no reason for him to build more homes than he needs to. And I think it's 4 homes he can put there now? And so if he's building 4 homes, he could make just as much money with those 4 homes as he could with 5, because he could make a bigger home, a nicer home, and there's, you mentioned something about the neighborhood being affordable. Well, that area, the prices have skyrocketed. And so I think the guy is going a little too far, and I don't believe there's any reason for him to give his own. Oh, and there's one other thing too, is by expanding his property line, which he's trying to do too, it's also going to cause a problem of safety. Because when you're going out of Four Winds, if you look to the left, you can see now. But by him putting up a home closer to the street and in that right-of-way, it's going to be difficult to be able to see oncoming traffic. So please deny him of that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mike Stetson, please.
Good evening, members of the board. Mike Stetson, third-generation Floridian, and live around the corner from this house. I've got a couple of comments. I asked the owner here, are these conceptual drawings?
And by the way, and you can bring it up, and then the board's gonna have to ask them directly, because in public comment, we can't go back and
Okay.
forth.
Gotcha, okay, sorry. I know better.
I will say that is what he said in his presentation, that those
Right.
would be conceptual.
Right, so those are, 2 stories. I have no problem with a 2-story. It's true that there are apartments and condos in that area, but this is the point where it transitions to single family. All the way east through Snug Harbor, it's all single family. Across the street, there are 2 units, there are 2 apartment buildings, condos, but they're set back and they're very well screened by vegetation, so it's not going to stick out there like this. I think it's the density. I'm concerned about the number of people there, the parking, and if it goes to duplexes, is there enough parking? So I think it's just, it doesn't go with what's in the neighborhood. It does farther to the west, but those are some things you can't see from the street so much. Anyway, that's my comments, and
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Can I make a request that speakers state whether or not they are residents of the city of Stewart or whether they live in unincorporated Martin County?
All right, next we have Robin Cartwright.
Mine is actually specific to the other project.
Oh, okay, so we'll table you here. Okay. Linda K. Richards, please.
I'm also the other project.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, Dale Thornberry, please.
I also have some documents that I brought for you all. Did you get a chance to hand those out? if you would please, as well as I've got a petition signed by 66 people opposing this rezoning, and I've got one copy of that for you as well.
Apologies, could you state your name and where
Oh,
you
yes.
live?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dale Thornberry, it's my wife Julie. We live in 265 Southeast St. Lucie Boulevard. We are, I mean, you could be, I put it right here on the, we're right next door to
Yeah,
the
we can
subject
see right
property.
Got it.
So, and I'll make references to this as well. I think we need to look beyond just colors on a zoning map and really look at what the existing development pattern is. And so I'm going to bring up some of the underlying development patterns and try and really add some color to what's going on and why this is not good for our neighborhood. So if we go through, we look at, I've labeled one house E. I'm calling that the elephant in the room, okay? This was not City of Stewart's finest hour, having a 5-plex multifamily stuck in the middle of a single-family neighborhood. I don't think we'd want to model anything going forward off of that. But then I've labeled number 1, 2, and 3 are the houses that are on lots that are greater than 100 foot in width, and they have 2-car driveways and 2-car garages. And we'll get to why that's so important in a minute. And then there is a series of 8 lots that are 50 foot wide on Monterey. And then, of course, there's the condos, Snug Harbor West. There's about, I think, 60 homes, residents, that use this Four Winds Boulevard to access their property in behind. So if you go to page 2, we'll talk a little bit about, one of the first interesting things is there was some discussion about the missing middle. Right? Well, I didn't know what that was, so of course I did what everybody does. I Googled it, right? And turns out there is a missingmiddle.com. If you look at page 4, there's missingmiddle.com. And it does call for higher density for homes. But there's the number one feature of truly missing middle is walkability. This is something for big cities like San Francisco and New York that they do that. So I've never seen anybody walk into dinner. I've never seen anybody, walk into the grocery store from my neighborhood. They're all in a car. So I wondered, hey, how can I know if this is a walkable neighborhood? Well, turns out there's a walkscore.com, right? And so I put in our address. We are not walkable. We are car dependent. We got a score of a 36. So we are not a candidate in our community for missing middle. Okay, I think it's a misnomer, and I think it's something that he's just presented in order to overdevelop this lot and give him some justification for that. The second item is the current zoning, and I've got a question for staff. I thought R1 was 75-foot lot widths.
That's correct.
Okay, he's got 250 feet. How is he putting in 4 properties there?
250 feet will allow for 3 single-family R1 residences.
Okay, so not 4.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. So what we're really, the current zoning allows for a 50% increase in density, right? And so you're already getting 50% growth in density. It doesn't need, why do we need to have more density than that? The average setback, this is another challenge. The average setback on his plot, he's got it 10 feet off of,
At the discretion of the board, we normally let the people kind of wrap up their comments.
Okay,
well,
that's fine.
and I also, on the 66 people signed, 50 of them, because of COVID, I might ask the board to be able to let me finish my presentation. 50 of them said they would allow me to speak for them.
Okay.
So I'll be done, and you give me another 5 or 6 minutes if you don't mind. I am a licensed building contractor, and I've got quite a bit of information. I mean, I have done a pretty deep analysis of this, if you wouldn't mind, under the COVID conditions. There's a lot of people, these 66 people would like to be heard, and they asked me to speak for them.
Could we get a recommendation from the attorney?
We do not have the legal authority to take the hearsay comments of him that 66 people have dedicated 3 minutes apiece to him, number one. Number two, it doesn't matter because we don't let public assign their 3 minutes. So you get 3 minutes, and obviously, as I mentioned, we allow people to go a little bit longer, but if we let everybody go 10 minutes, I do want to have dinner tonight.
Yeah, maybe an extra minute to finish up?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did an analysis. I went and measured, and I looked at everybody in the neighborhood. The average width of the front lot is 74 feet in that neighborhood. 75 is R1. it is not it is not a big burden on him to maintain 75 feet front lot. Secondarily, please look at why 50-foot lots will not work. We don't have to go very far to see that. Go to Monterey Avenue. There is street parking all over Monterey Avenue. You cannot street park on Four Winds. There's a ditch on both sides. And it's only 14 foot wide because it's got a median in the middle. You are going to get somebody killed because ambulances and fire trucks will not be able to drive down that road if in fact there's street parking. And take a look at his lot. He does not allow for parking. There is not enough room for people to come there. There's no room for delivery trucks. There's no room for a service vehicle to be there. You're going to get somebody killed down in Snug Harbor West because there's going to be a car sitting in the driveway and a fire truck and/or an ambulance will not be able to go through. I really would like you to walk through this, take a look at this document, and take a look at the responsibility. I understand he wants to profit. He really wants to be able to, put as many homes on there as possible to max. It's up to you to protect us from that overdevelopment. Thank you for your time.
And then just one question, as she had asked, is your property where the location is, yours considered still in the city, correct? Your
Oh, yeah,
property?
no, I'm right next to him. I'm
Okay,
Dale
all
and
right.
Julie
I just
right
wanted to
here.
make sure, because you had wanted that
Yeah,
clarified.
and we're not a transient. It is a double. My friends and my relatives stay there. It is on VRBO. We've rented it 8 times, I think, in 3 years.
Okay.
So it's not, I have no idea why it says multifamily.
And your 66 people, are they residents of the neighborhood?
They're all, and their addresses are all on this petition. Happy to
And
circulate
are
there.
they
I did. She's got the
Are
copy.
they Snug Harbor residents, or are they?
There's a few Snug
city
Harbor.
residents?
We walked the condos, Four Winds condos. We also walked our neighborhood.
And the Four Winds condos, which are
Four Winds
R3,
condos.
are
And then
against
also Kruger Park, I think it is. Yeah, Kruger Park. We walked that. Every single person that we explained this to signed this petition or agreed with. One person didn't want to sign it because they were afraid to be on the record, but there was not a single person in our neighborhood that agreed to this rezoning.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Dale Thornberry?
Oh, that was him.
Oh, that's, sorry, thank you. Fred Rutsky?
Fred Rutsky, 325 Southwest St. Lucie. I'm in the Martin County line, right on the line, but I'm a half a block away from this gentleman that wants to rezone. His rezoning should stay the same. If nobody's really looked at the setback, what he wants to build all the way out to the sidewalk. If you go down St. Lucie Boulevard, every house is set back 25 to 35 feet. So when you're coming down St. Lucie, he's going to be a sore thumb. It's going to be sticking out right on the road. Four Winds property owners, Four Winds Snug Harbor West property owners are going to have to pull out. When they come out to that roadway on St. Lucie, they're going to have to pull all the way out to either go left or right. That's going to be a disaster. The apartments that he's talking about across the street to the north is a high density. All those kids come out and get on the school bus right there every morning. Everybody has to slow down. It's at 25 miles per hour. Does anybody do 25? No. Everybody does 35 to 45. So hopefully you can deny this. It won't look good at all on that St. Lucie Boulevard that goes all the way around through Snug Harbor. It's going to be a sore thumb. I agree with, he needs to keep it the way it is, do the 3 houses or the 4 houses, do the setback to 25 feet. He's good to go right there. I totally disagree with the R2. Thank you so much.
So I have a question just of clarification, now that we have had the traffic issue introduced, or the traffic potential danger. So when you change to the R2 designation, I just want to make sure I can understand, your setback is different, so you don't have to be set back as far? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that's not the case. R1, R2 can both be set back. There is a provision to set them back 25 feet, but they can both also be set back 15 feet with a porch.
Okay.
That is common in the
What
city.
about the corner? What about the corner lot, which the one that would be Fairwinds and St. Lucie Boulevard, does that have a corner setback of 25 feet on both sides?
That's classed as a double frontage, so
If I
Can I-
help to
can I
respond
just-
to the question, I think
I'll just finish what I'm going to say.
Oh, he's got it.
So the corner-
Kev's got it.
Yeah, the corner lot is classed as a double front lot, so the side setback on St. Lucie would be 10 feet in a comparison to, is it 7.5 that it would normally be for a side setback?
Okay.
I know I have a chance to rebut it, so I can answer some of the questions and concerns.
At the, not
the end?
now, but at the, when we're finished with public hearing, we'll let you get back
Okay.
up before the
Okay.
motion to
Okay.
proceed to talk or whatever. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have an opportunity.
All right, next up is Sheila Kurtz.
Hi, I am a Stewart resident, and I'm right there in the Four Winds Drive area.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Yes, sorry. My concern with this project so far, yes, I have seen the sidewalk all busted up, and I don't know what that was all about, but there's been a little intrusion there. It's not safe, definitely not safe, and there are a lot of kids around there. If we approved a project that would allow the duplexes, we'll have a huge parking problem. I know some people don't think there will be, but you know, you're not going to have just one person probably in an individual residence. You're going to have more than one car, and they're going to park on the street, and that's going to be Four Winds Drive, and the visibility, if that setback is allowed, which it would be, of course, you know, would be just terrible. So I think it's a safety issue on top of everything else, not even getting into the fact that, you know, it's a development issue, the way it's going to look. But that setback also is going to really be negative for St. Lucie Boulevard there. I mean, it's a beautiful street as it is right now. It's really going to change it a lot, especially when you've got, you know, that kind of visibility. And when you have to come out on Four Winds Drive to try and see what's coming, it's going to be dangerous. So I'm really concerned about that. And I understand the profit issue, but if a quality project is put there, you'll still get really good money for the property as time goes by. So I don't have any sympathy there. But I'm really concerned about the safety issue. It's already, with the way the sidewalk is, you know, not a good situation. So, but the parking issue is going to be terrible. And of course, they're going to park on Four Winds Drive. And the gentleman that spoke earlier had said, yeah, it's ditches on both sides. I mean, the drainage, if you drive around there in, during a storm or whatever, after the storm, you'll see, I mean, that whole area, you know, is that a lot of that area is there's drainage issues. So you could have a lot of problems. That's it.
Thank you very much. Barbara Vingras? Second issue, great. Okay, and Mr. Donald Dosher?
Thank you. I'm a 30-year resident of Monterey Avenue. I live right catty corner right from this project. My arguments are something along the lines, or they are along the lines of historical. I mean, I assume when these R1, R2, R3 were first designated, that some thought was put into what a community should look like and what should be R1 and what should be R2. I'm very concerned that if this changes, what is to keep the other houses? I'm in one of those little 50-foot lots. I was a teacher for 28 years, and that's all I can afford. And, you know, what will happen now down the road if people just buy 3, 4 houses and then they want to have those all changed over to R2 or R3 and expand? This whole area, that one block of just one-story, single-family houses is just a wonderful area. And I'm just opposed to messing with that. And I think it's the zoning that it has now is the zoning that should change, stay that way. Thank you.
have a few questions for staff I'd like clarification on. So the newer development that's on East Ocean at High School and Hibiscus, what's that zoned?
Are you talking about John Layton's?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that was an RPUD, so it allowed for commercial in front and residential in the back.
No, they're like four
No,
white houses.
Drew Hartman.
The townhouses.
Yeah.
Is it Reed's?
It's John Layton's.
Yeah,
Right
it's town's
across.
property.
By the way, as Tom mentioned, that project came in as a PUD, and when he mentioned the commercial, the parcel actually goes out to East Ocean Boulevard. So the John Gonzalez's real estate office is part of that approval. So it was commercial out front, and then the 5 two-story townhouses with garages with common wall there, 5 in a row, was part of the PUD approval. So it's not R1, it's not R2, and it's not R3.
But-
It is a separate PUD process. So
Okay.
the commission
So not
essentially
comparable to
assigned
what
it
would be
its
possible
own
here.
zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Originally, it was
And then-
R3.
So, and our PUD is essentially conditional zoning.
Yeah, okay, and then my other question is just from staff's perspective, as the planning experts, do you have safety concerns about the setbacks here?
Not any more than we would have on any other single-family development. There are visibility displays enforced during site plan review. The setbacks are in line with what other single-family developments would be required to do. The volume of traffic is concerned to be de minimis in terms of there is not usually any comment from the transportation engineers regarding the volume of traffic because these are single-family homes. There will be, I think the applicant proposes to do garages and driveways to accommodate parking on site. The city does not allow parking on street, and if that did occur, then there would be code enforcement.
So code enforcement would take care of any
Yeah.
parking violations on the street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I ask a question about the sidewalk?
Yes.
What is going on with the sidewalk?
Okay, so the sidewalk that everyone is in question of is on the corner here. Whoops, sorry. In this location here, there's a sidewalk here. Over the years, the lady who owned this property also owned this, and they had like a private sidewalk within my property line. So the city of Stewart came out there because residents had called saying that this thing was falling apart because it was only like a 2-inch concrete pad that was poured there. This is not to code. They came out there, and when we put a survey line on, it is on my property. So this is not a public sidewalk. What has occurred is that this thing now becomes a liability issue for who? Myself. And so the city goes, well, you either repair it or you get rid of it. And they already started, they were the ones who basically took out that segment. And what I did was like, leave me enough so I could make it, and I put plants and flowers in there to make it where, this is not a area to walk through because this is private property. And that's why I hear someone says, oh, code enforcement didn't enforce it. They can't. This is my property. This is on my property, and I had to maintain it by keeping folks off of it, which is what occurred here. Okay, but the tear up that occurred was not by me. That was by the city went out there not knowing, started tearing it apart, and then when I went out there, we pulled out the surveys to make sure we understood what was going on. They're like, oh, we can't touch this. We'll just have to, leave it where it is, and that's what occurred. Now, as we were talking about the setbacks, I keep hearing setback. I'm going to be 7.5 feet off the sidewalk, and I want people to understand. So here is the city's sidewalk. There is a 10-foot, I think, setback that's right-of-way. That's not a part of anyone's property that runs along Snug Harbor. So you have 10 foot there. Then, per code, even if I wanted to do an R1 today, I can do 7.5 feet there. So if everyone's worried about a setback, whether I do the 3 units, per code, I could do 7.5 feet there. There's also an alleyway here that's right-of-way. That's, encumbered by other uses and people's driveways and stuff like that. But that's not an access point to allow people, if I wanted to do something to get access into my property by using the city's right-of-way alley that sits right here. I'm looking at trying to create something, like I said, it's single-family homes, duplex. Yes, it's an R2 zoning duplex, which allows the flexibility to go to both. I'm not looking at duplex. I've shown you the concepts of what I see here. Now, I keep hearing safety concerns and traffic concerns. There are 3 homes there today, or 2 homes there today. It's platted for 5. I heard someone mention the forefathers must have known what they're thinking. The forefathers did, and they had 50-foot lot splits, which is what I have there today, which is what I'm saying. I'm going to go to the history of what the forefathers thought about. Over time, yes, development has occurred, and I think when you look at the zoning that has happened is, and Kev, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, what probably occurred when they started zoning this, when they're trying to make the changes, this is an existing use, we're just going to plop that zoning there. And that's how that occurred, which is what the city is now trying to correct as they move forward in this whole plan. This is not, yeah, everyone looks, oh, it's a developer wants to make money. I mean, my units that I rented them to folks that were working in hairdressing salons who can't afford anywhere else. I rent these things at a loss. I get, like you mentioned earlier, here you have folks that, once again, I've got, oh, yeah, we have transient uses. It's 8, when you go online and you hear there's 8 people that can come in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, that's a dense use. That's more of a use and traffic use in my view. As far as my view corridors, I think dictated by code because of my setbacks, I've got another 10-foot here and another 10-foot here that allows for that clearance. My whole thing is I think that based on where we are today, and Kev, you can tell me with this zoning requirement that I'm asking for, this is not a site plan review process. This is a rezone of a zoning, and I wanted to stand on that zoning by virtue of I'm surrounded by R3s entirely around my site. I'm trying to be compatible with the uses that are there, and I'm looking to do R2, which keeps me within the fabric of what's there today. Another gentleman says, I live in Monterey, and I love my little 50-foot lot. I don't see how all of a sudden this is different. This is keeping in line with what's there. It's compatible with what's there. This is what's there today. There you go. That's what's there today. And you have, when everyone's worried, oh, duplex parking. I mean, unless you're telling me that this is an issue here with parking, then the same issue will occur here. Well, if there's none here, then how can there be something here that will be there? I don't understand the arguments there. So I wanted to make sure we point that out. Now, as far as everyone saying that everyone's setback is around 25 feet, if that home, if I was to do a single-family home today, and I go by the map and the survey, I've got the sidewalk, I've got the roadway here. That's my right-of-way. That's where your roadway starts. You have the sidewalk. Then you have about 10 foot here. On a corner lot, you have about 10 foot. That's 20 feet, okay? Then going all the way out, you've probably got about 30 feet. So that stays in line with everything that I keep hearing the argument of this being more clustered or no. By today, this can be done regardless as far as
So,
that
Mr.
setback
Price,
there.
I have a question. Can you turn those front 2 houses, those 2 houses that are on the corner, can you turn them so they have frontage on St. Lucie Boulevard?
Well,
And
the
then
thing
you
is
would
now I'm
still have
replatting.
the same amount of space.
Yeah, but now I'm replatting, and that's an additional cost, and I'm going through, these are the things that I'm trying to keep down, and we talk about affordability and
But
trying to
your
create that.
replatting, it wouldn't really be any more cost, would it?
What's that?
Would that be more cost? Because you're going to have to go back to, you're going to have to replat anyway.
No, I do not. At this point,
Well-
I'm platted as
Well, as I
5.
understand, if your properties were put together in 1977, then you now have 1 lot, and you have to replat it to the 50-foot.
I guess,
Am I
Kat, you
not
can
correct?
answer that for
I'm
me.
just,
I
I'm
just
just,
had to
we're
do
just
that.
considering that question here, whether or not taking those 2 lots and redefining the lot line. I think you can do that one time.
Mhm.
So depending on the area and the layout, it may be potential without having a replat that could occur.
Because then you would have the 25-foot setback from St. Lucie Boulevard, which seems to be very bothersome to
Well,
your neighbors.
it would vary. Okay, so when
So
we're
you would
talking
have
about the
2
25-foot lot, right? So then basically then my side setback would be 5 foot up along this
Yeah,
alleyway,
around your
correct?
alley, and plus you would have 60-foot lots, right? 65-foot lots in the front on St. Lucie Boulevard side? Because you've got 130 now, right? You've got a depth of 130?
Yes.
So you would have 65 by 100-foot lots.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
No. Yeah.
Okay, but what
No,
I'm saying,
we're
but
looking- yeah, sorry.
given the change, right? He goes to R2. You're given the change. If you
Can I ask a
turn-
question?
Real fast.
Yeah.
If you
There's
turn
there's
them-
probably no doubt, if in fact the board, it's R1 right now, 75-foot lot width would be required. So if you're inferring that he could turn the lots now and do that, the answer is no.
Yeah.
If it's R2 zoning, then the landowner under R2 zoning has the discretion to follow that code with whatever the code is. So probably if he wanted to turn it, he could, but he wouldn't need a public hearing to plat it and come back and turn it. It also can't be conditionalized on that because it's straight zoning. If it was a PUD, the board might suggest we want them switched this way or that way, and you'd see site plans and you'd see, visualizations of it. But for what it's worth, the math is that you have to have in an R2 zoning a certain square footage and a certain lot width and so as a result, if you wanted to do them diagonally and you met those lot widths, you could do that as well.
I understand that, but I think it might be a way for you to get along
Well-
with your neighbors really well that wouldn't cost you.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a matter of, at this point, it's a first step in the process, okay? So right now, we're dealing with site plan, which is not, from my understanding in the zoning, for what I'm dealing with here, that's not something I'm here to, the site and the rezone should stand on its own, and that's what I'm looking for, okay?
Yeah, I
As it
think
relates
it's
to
just
site
important
plan.
for us to remember that,
Yes.
while personally, I find those conceptual drawings very attractive, he could get this rezoned and flip the property and sell it to someone else who has a
Right.
totally
And
different
do something-
vision.
and do-
So I think we should not consider the developer, don't clap yet. I don't think we should consider the developer, and I don't think we should consider the plans. We should just consider, do we think it's appropriate to rezone these lots in this neighborhood?
Yes.
Yes, and
Okay, so do we want to make a motion?
By the way, I just want to be clear, Kelly, have you called all of the cards for the public hearing?
Yes, I have all the cards that are on this issue, the others are the other
One
issue.
thing that I forgot to tell you, and I just want to be clear on the record, we publish these meetings on Zoom, and I happen to know there's our people on Zoom, so we have to ask Paul back there, is there anybody on Zoom that has public comment? By the way, this is our guest star, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Currently, no one's raised their hand on Zoom. So for the record, there are no public.
so I have a quick comment.
Yes.
So as far as the neighbors are concerned, tonight is just a matter of zoning, and there will be opportunity, in the next step to consider what is approved, so.
Guys, we can't have people in the audience yelling out, or we could take more public comment, but we can't be yelling
You can
comments.
come
It's
up.
hard to keep
You
the
can come
record.
up.
And tonight is the LPA meeting. No matter what, if it's denied or granted, it will still move forward and go to the city commission and would be a city commission item. The city commission vote is the binding vote. This is a recommendation or an advisory board, so regardless of what their vote is, whether it's up or down, it doesn't mean it's up or down. It means that's what the advisory committee is going to recommend to the city commission.
Do you want to speak?
Oh, do we need to do a formal card for
Sir.
the public comment?
If you could announce your name.
Okay, my
For the
name is
record.
Glenn White.
Stand talk in the mic,
I live
please.
at Four Winds at the end of the street in the condominium, on the first floor. My only question, I got, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, now.
First question, and there's no
Not
parking
anymore.
at all, even,
You're supposed to give public comment to the board.
okay, there's no
then we'll
parking
ask.
shown on the drawings. The conceptual drawing shows a limited amount of parking in the front. With all the setbacks and the housing being tight, there's no room for a parking or a driveway between the places. That means they're gonna park in the front. And I can tell you right now, the sidewalk issue, I'll talk before I'm done, but kids walk down through there, you got nowhere to go. And, this Amazon, the mailman, anybody that stops, you can't get by. So what do? They go around and go the other side of the street, which is in the wrong way, in the wrong direction, every day. And I'll tell you, in the morning, that sidewalk you're talking about, I called zoning. I was there the day they tore it apart.
Sir, please address it to the board.
All he did was put 5 plants in the corner. And then at the other end, he took the debris and piled it up on the sidewalk so nobody could walk through. That was unsafe, in my opinion. But it's on his property. But that attitude tells me he has no concern.
Sir,
Do we have any other?
Mr. White, I'll just need you to fill out a blue card before you leave. Sorry, that's me talking over here, the clerk. Just a blue card before you leave for the record. Thank you.
So, just so that I understand, that if the zoning does change from R1 to R2, the gentleman still has to come back with the site plan, and so so is that when they come back with the PUD that we would then, or no? He can just build whatever he wants and it doesn't have to include parking? Like how, I mean,
No.
explain that.
So the zoning would be whatever the zoning is. So whatever the zoning anybody has on their property, they come in and they pull a permit, a building permit for a single-family house. With that, it's reviewed against the city's code, and that code has provisions for setbacks, building height, driveways, parking, garages, everything that a single-family dwelling would be expected to provide. Lot coverage is an important issue. The outlines that you see on the conceptual or the allowable setbacks are very confusing in that that's the maximum parameters, but the zoning code only allows 50% of that lot to be covered by building or impervious surface. So it's almost impossible, in fact impossible, to build entirely out to your whole setbacks. That is not able to be achieved during normal zoning activities.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Can I, one more thing, sorry. There was a lot of concern about the water and the swales on Fairwind. And maybe, we have a new ordinance in the city that your
Yes.
water has to be kept on your property, which means that if you put out more water than you can hold, you have to build a retention area, you have to build a water garden, but you have to keep your own water. And I am certain that if his water went into anyone else's yard, that everyone would be there quickly to fine him, because eventually that's what we'll do. So I think that might help you feel a little bit better.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
You need a motion.
We need a motion.
Who wants to make a motion to vote?
I can make a motion. I motion that we approve this zoning change from R1 to R2. I live in an area very much like this, and parking is sometimes a problem, but I know my neighbors, and we move our cars for each other. There are many, so I motion that we approve this to go forward from R1 to R2.
You need a second.
I second.
There was a motion and a second. You've already taken public comment.
Did somebody just say 1 sec that I missed?
I think it was a phone.
Oh, sorry. I was completely confused.
It's kind of good. You can-
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No. Actually, because it's a vote of approval or denial, we'd ask that you ask the clerk to take roll so that everybody can be on the record as how they vote.
Okay. So you do that.
Correct.
You, the chair would take, please take roll.
Okay, please take roll, clerk.
Board Member Bromfield,
I approve.
Vice Chair De La Vega,
I approve.
Chair Lorraine,
I do not approve.
Board Member Vitale.
I approve.
The motion passes.
And you may now want to just take a 2-minute break because I think the vast majority of the folks.
Okay, we will take a 2-minute break to switch in and out. Anybody? Meeting again?
And hello, if everybody could take a seat so we can get started again. Are we back on the record? We're already back on the record, so you're being tape recorded. Also, at the beginning of the meeting, I forgot, but the city manager asked me if I could give the board members City of Stuart masks.
All right.
You don't have to wear them, but he wanted to give them to you.
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, I can.
Thank you.
Well, I'm selling mine for $25.
All right, I'll put mine on.
Why, thank you. Thank you very much.
One.
Thank you.
Look at, oh, is this the filter? Oh, very cool.
Wow, with the filter and everything.
We're old friends.
All right, so are we gonna go back to have we're gonna go back to the first presentation, and we are gonna have Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Reitz,
Okay, in here it says mayor.
okay.
They gave it away.
Is there anybody else that wants to turn on these blue suits before we get started? Seeing none?
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Okay, whoever is presenting. you're
Tom
up.
Reitz, Senior Planner, for the record.
Okay,
Good evening, LPA. Yes, this is the first item. It was originally slated for the first, and now it's the second. It's Central Parkway Lofts, RPUD. It's a major amendment, and the applicant is the Farrell Building Company, Incorporated. So the site, Central Park North and Central Park South, straddles Central Parkway, about midpoint between Canner Highway and US 1. It's the site, the two parcels equal 6.65 acres in total. This was originally rezoned to RPUD in 2005. It was originally slated for a mixed use of commercial and residential. In fact, Mr. Freeman worked here and was the planner at that time, so I'm going to turn it over to him to give you a brief history of how he planned this.
Yeah, this original application came into the city around 2006. It's been subsequently, the timeline's been extended on at least one occasion to around 2008. But the original proposal was for 4 stories residential units. There were 84 proposed at that time. The units were fairly large, most, if not all, being larger than 2,100 square feet. So they were quite large units. That PUD has really become defunct. No action was taken on that, and it lies there. This is an amendment which will override that PUD.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Okay, so the land use is office residential, and that will remain the same. It will support the proposal for the 196 apartment units. The zoning will remain RPUD, and it will be a major amendment. So we can see the site exists mainly north to south. The applicant has really done a good job in laying the buildings out around a two-way aisle. The two-way aisle, basically, you can see from one end of the project to the other, consists of parallel parking, a generous green strip, native plantings and trees to create a shaded streetscape. There's also generous sidewalk and then landscaping up against the building. Part of the RPUD requires open space, and the definition of open space includes retention and buffer areas, and the applicant has provided that at 27% of the site. Open space for RPUDs is 30%, so that will be one of the variances that they will be asking for, and I'll go over that later in the presentation. Also, there's an existing ditch that will remain and be redesigned and maybe reconfigured as part of the future Willoughby extension. When should that come in at a future date? But the applicant has, a previous owner has donated, or not donated, but designated property 30 feet towards this right-of-way. And so that exists in perpetuity as right-of-way, and hopefully will be developed at some point in the future with the Willoughby extension. One of the conditions that we've had on other projects was attainable housing, and the applicant has agreed to designate 20 of those units, that's 10% rounded up, of the one-bedroom units rented at no greater than 80% of the AMI in Martin County. Mr. Freeman has some numbers as far as how much those one-bedrooms would go for.
So the 80% of area median income is based on the Martin County Port St. Lucie MSA, which for a one-bedroom unit is $1,041 per month. So that would be the maximum rental limit for those type of units. So the applicant is committing to have 20 units limited to around that rental level.
And that would be in perpetuity for the project. There's no time set or a sunset on that.
Can I ask a question about that, or better to save it?
Sure.
I just want to clarify, so I see it's the 10% of the one-bedroom units, or is it all of the units?
All the units. It's 20 total units
Cool,
of the one
great.
bedroom.
Can I ask a question right now, too?
Go ahead.
In one of our previous projects that we approved, they promised us this, and then it was sold, and the new owner came back and said that they weren't going to do it, and we had, right? Is that correct?
So
If I can chime in on that, this is actually an amended PUD, and before that is because in 2004, the board went through the LPA, approved it, and then the city commission approved it, and then the owners, for one reason or another, chose not to develop it, whether it was economic or simply loss of interest or the recession, or they decided the market didn't support the Lofts project that it was originally scheduled as, because they were like 3,000 square foot units. Then, as a result, it fades away and doesn't get built. When this comes forward, instead of rescinding that PUD and having a special item just to rescind that PUD, we bring this forward as an amended PUD. If this gets denied, there's essentially no zoning because that PUD is expired anyway. But if this gets granted, the amendment itself in the title search rescinds that.
I understand that, but what I'm talking about is a project that we recently approved with this same stipulation, and then they were sold and it's gone, right?
So what happened there was I think you're talking about the Savannah Place development, which they did commit to a number of affordable housing units or attainable housing units. That project changed hands. The new owner came in and negotiated rather than applying those affordable units to the development to put a contribution at time of CO into a fund. $250,000 will be provided to a city housing fund in lieu of the housing.
And I should note, the guy that bought that development was bound to the conditions in the PUD. He actually amended that by coming to a public hearing and provided notice to everybody within the requirements and had a public hearing and presented that amendment from that condition to the financial condition, and the city commission approved that.
Okay.
So
So
if
we're
this were to be
happy.
granted and then sold, it's still a recorded bound deed restriction until the commission changes it.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the requested variances. In your packet, you may have seen this and read this and wondered exactly what it was. The applicant is asking for four variances or exceptions to the code, which will and may be offset by amenities that they're providing. And I'll let the applicant talk about those amenities during her presentation. But just to go over these requested variances in detail, density, the code allows between or up to 15 dwelling units by right and up to 30 by the city commission approval. And the applicant is asking for 29.47 dwelling units per acre. Open space, as I alluded to earlier, is being proposed at 27%, where 30% is required. There's also a section in Chapter 5 that talks about native vegetation. Since the site is basically bare and doesn't have any native vegetation, the applicant's required to provide a 25-foot strip of vegetation native on the side and the rear. In fact, the applicant is proposing a 15-foot native preserve along the eastern property line in between the commercial and the proposed multifamily. And then finally, the parking, the code requires 1.5 parking spaces for one-bedroom apartments and 2 parking spaces for 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom apartments. And the applicant is proposing an average of 1.31 parking spaces per unit. And again, these variances can be offset by amenities and/or the applicant saying that this is typically what we need in line of parking and what has worked. And at that point, I'll just hand it off to the applicant to give their presentation.
Good evening again. Marcella Camblor, planner for the Farrell Development Group. There's a number of other consultants that participated in this. I believe most of them are on Zoom, except for Mr. Don Quazzo, who's also planner and landscape architect for this project, and his firm, actually, not just him. So thank you. Which one is forward? Sorry, I should know this. Okay, so, this is an interesting meeting for all of you. To have it as your first meeting, what is it, from the frying pan to the fire or something? Staff explained where this is located, and yes, it is an existing RPUD zoning that we are amending to an RPUD zoning that is arranged differently, and yes, has a different density proposed, but fundamentally has a completely different unit type proposed. What was proposed there at the time were really luxury condominiums, and I'll show you a little bit of the plans. And we are looking at what market conditions are right now and the needs for housing in the city, and therefore reconfigured partly based on that. The site to the north and to the west is surrounded by pretty unique open space, and I'll get into that detail in a second. To the east, there's light industrial uses within the city of Stuart, and commercial and light industrial. These are commercial units and flex space, office space right here. There's a canal and a public right-of-way that divide the project from unincorporated Martin County down here. This in the counties is RT zoning, which is our mobile home zoning. There's some single-family homes too. A recently approved townhome, and I think there's some detached, I'm not sure. I think it's called Seaside Development, gated subdivision here, and then residential, a school, more residential as we go east. So this corridor that was once envisioned as a mostly commercial corridor in the city has been slowly converting into a residential. As staff mentioned, between the last RPUD and this one, there has been that dedication of right-of-way to the county. It was a purchase, but it was an agreed-upon purchase, no taking. And there's also an easement and that additional right-of-way to the south. So there's a couple of right-of-ways, significant right-of-ways to the west and the south. Now, the first thing that we did when approaching this new project was, just go 10,000 feet up and look at how this is working within the rest of the city. One of the most incredible things is that this very unique piece that straddles both sides of Central Parkway is almost the head start of the most amazing natural feature within the city, the Poppleton Creek and the sort of the greenway and blueway that traverses the entire city. The city property is right here and city property is right here. This is all, I believe it's all city-owned. The light green is privately owned, but there's public right-of-way all the way to the end of the creek right here. And it just creates a very unique ability, if we set this project up correctly, to allow access to the city as a whole, to the community as a whole, to experience city living and nature living, not just for the residents of this project, again, but for the city as a whole. So that was sort of the fundamental guiding principle, and we started, imagining in our offices, what if you could get your bicycle, ride it, and, you'd essentially almost be downtown without ever hitting a road, and we talked to staff about that possibility. The second interesting thing is that this site, again, once envisioned as purely commercial, is now really at the heart of everything that is happening in the city of Stuart. Within a 3-minute bike ride, there's the second largest employer in Martin County, which is the school district. Within just a 2-minute bike ride, you get to the node of the intersection of Monterey Road and US 1, which is one of the largest retail nodes and restaurant nodes in the southern part of the city. And so part of the justification of increasing density is let's put people where the jobs and where the retail are, so that we can't guarantee that everybody's going to leave their cars forever, but at least if we can provide some things nearby, whereas some of their trips by choice could be in a different mode of transportation. So again, with that, then we saw what can we do to the project to take advantage of those things and support the city in those efforts too. There's also 2 bus lines that go through the city, the one that goes all along US 1 and then the loop. And this is, again, strategically located to access either of those. And we truly believe, and just me personally by working a lot with the city, that we are moving towards a more balanced mobility here. This is a little bit of a commercial. I was last week visiting Lake Nona for a different local project. These are autonomous vehicles. These are cute little buses. This one's called Ollie. They're made with a 3D printer, which makes them very, very quickly made and very inexpensively made. They're made in the U.S. In Lake Nona, these have a very intense route. They go every 15 minutes. There's no driver, and it's scary at first, and then it's very exciting. They go very slowly, but every 15 minutes you have one of these. And the reason I'm showing you this is Tradition already has them. Tradition has the same company working in them. And by the way, the person that met us in Orlando to show us this amazing thing, their president lives in Stuart. So we need an Ollie in Stuart. But part of this is, again, thinking that when we're bringing a project forward, we are bringing it not just for today, but for the next generation as well. And a lot of things are changing when it comes to particularly to planning and to technology. The previously approved plan were these 2 U-shaped projects. I covered down here inadvertently the square footage. The square footage of the 2 projects, of this project, was larger than what is being proposed today, but not by much, just by 5%. But it had pretty much half the units, twice and 5% more the development. It was a 4-story building, and as Mr. Mortel explained, this is what was approved back then. What's interesting about this, it's no different than all of the other development that has been approved along Central Parkway, which is gated, which has a great amount of amenities, but only for the people that live in there. The Farrell Group did not want to do that. Again, they believe in the city, they believe in community, and so they said, well, what can we do? Can we front Central Parkway? It's a hard street to make it pedestrian friendly. And so they decided to create an internal new street. This internal new street essentially creates a signature address. It's not gated, so anyone can come in here or go out there. It's 2 ways, but once you come in, you can also loop around and come back out, or loop around and come back out, and same thing, 2 loops on both sides. Again, keep in mind, this right here will eventually be the Willoughby extension. It curves, it will go around this way. The point was not just to create this signature address, but to provide access to the green and that potential trailhead should the city decide that it's a great idea to work on having access to this greenway and paths through the nature area into the more urban parts of the city. As proposed, as staff said, 196 residential units, 10 of them attainable workforce, whatever the terminology that is used in the proposal. 25% of those are going to be age targeted or age restricted. Again, it was a way to ensure that the community was mixed income and mixed age, a little bit by design, to really create something where there's people there every day that don't necessarily have to go to work because they're retired, and they're not limited to living in, an age-restricted community that is just that. There's a lot of people that want to, grandparents that want to babysit somebody else's kids when they're around. I wish I had that right now. A proposed clubhouse right where the previous project had a commercial use. Again, a commercial use that nowadays would probably be isolated. And if there's one thing that we know about retail, is that retail, as we know, it has disappeared. And unless it's really tied and anchored by other larger uses, it's very difficult to make it work. The variances, and it's true, staff spoke about 4 variances. These are variances relative to the existing zoning, the R3, if I'm not mistaken, right? A PUD is new zoning that you create. So I'm okay. It's a little pet peeve. I agree that it's part of the creation of new zoning, and so you compare to the closest zoning that you have. And yes, in exchange for these that staff mentioned, the applicant is proposing a number of benefits. So this is the first view of the 4-story residential buildings that step down onto 3-story terraces on both ends and create that central spine. As I mentioned before, the relation to the units in the back is after our landscape buffer and a canal and a street, and then this neighborhood in Martin County. And there will be, I think, an 80-foot wide road on this side as well. That spine that allows the access onto this green network, hopefully, in the future. And in that street, on this end, we are looking south. Central Parkway is back here, trying to recreate one of the most walkable, pedestrian-oriented environments that we could possibly do in a road like Central Parkway that is anything but pedestrian-friendly. What's interesting about the way the road is designed, too, is that it's designed at grade. So the pavered road and the on-street parking and the grass and the sidewalk, by the way, a 6-foot sidewalk all along every one of the buildings, is at the same level. That does a couple of things. It creates a very pedestrian-oriented environment, but it also allows us to incorporate innovative urban light imprint stormwater. It's a mouthful, but it allows us to, on top of the stormwater that we are providing that is required by the city and by the code, we are providing these greens where otherwise, if you had these curbs and gutters and the typical thing that takes it onto your stormwater, we're providing these system of greens that allow for water to be cleaned in place, which is how it's done now in more urban places. And so with that in mind, this entire spine is a little stormwater system that is not being counted towards the stormwater requirements that we are already providing. A view from the street, and I would say what's interesting of this development too is, it is masonry modern architecture. It's your first meeting, so you're probably not, or not yours, you're probably not used to seeing one after another building come through of more traditional architecture, more Florida vernacular architecture. However, the masonry modern is an architectural style that is embedded in our Florida, Southeast Florida history. I mean, it started with the Art Deco, and from that it progressed to the masonry modern. This does something else. It's not just a capricious style choice. Studies are also showing us that it will be a rental community, that by 2030, 70% of the global workforce, not just the US, but the global workforce will be millennials and Generation Z. And a lot of what they are favoring in the markets right now is simpler, cleaner, more sustainable, less ornate, possibility of using roofs for solar panels, trying to do other more innovative things. I tried to show some examples, and I picked in particular a couple of photographs from Seaside, Florida. Everybody thinks that Seaside, Florida is the quintessential, cracker, little Florida vernacular town. And it's scattered with tons of examples of masonry modern architecture. The thing is, they're very well placed. And so in an environment where all the buildings are properly located, the architecture does not stand out as an eyesore. The community clubhouse will have a generator. It's part of the whole shelter in place. If there's a hurricane and this is a generator that kicks in, and if you choose not to evacuate and you stay in your very solid masonry building, and then run out of power, you do have a place to go. And I know this is something the city has been requiring in their PUDs as part of the benefits that are being presented for the improvements that are asked. This is the rear of the building. Again, in order to ensure a mix of incomes and a mix of ages, some of the units will be more conventional rental units, and others will be 3 bedrooms with 2-car garages that you can rent, very competitive to having a single-family home with 2-car garages, except you're in a very urban area, you have your amenities, and you really don't worry about maintenance, which is a lot of what, again, these 2 generations we see are doing. Job creation is something important about when considering PUDs. This development group is currently working on 2 other parcels in the city as well. Just for this, it is anticipated that they're going to have 5 permanent new positions. They've been working with 5 local consultant firms. Of course, construction is going to create hundreds of temporary jobs, but there's dozens of permanent contracts for maintenance that this will generate. And also, very importantly, they have selected a local builder to work with them. As I mentioned, the break between 10% workforce, 25% age targeted, and the remainder conventional units. The public access to this incredible facility that I know, if you guys decide to recommend approval, staff will be calling me to see when we can get this started. Along this, our submittal proposes that if the city were to move forward, a condition where maybe there's education about the type of landscaping that is in there, or some sort of a trailhead with eco art. But again, what that path and trail could look like into the city. A condition of PUDs and the list that you have of points that are awarded, that they don't really get counted, is having recycling facilities. The applicant is not only committed to obviously having the recycling facilities, they're going to have permanent staff there to supervise it, but they're also they're committing to educating their tenants every time they come in. I myself, and even my neighbors sometimes don't know if this you recycle or this you don't, but it's interesting that as you have more people that occupy the building because of the fact that it being rentals, there will be more education about the, you know, the recycling. I don't know why all the images are just going all over the place and covering the words. I apologize for that. As I mentioned, there are sidewalks on both sides of the street. This is not a code requirement, but there are sidewalks fronting every building on both sides of the street, the entire length of this street. This is completely, I mentioned the land for the right-of-way. The thought is, again, with multimodal facilities increasing in the city, and even the city having their public transit that you can manage with your phone or with an app, the clubhouse is being designed and put on the street so that if you're waiting for transit, you're waiting either in a shaded area in the clubhouse or even inside until you know the bus is coming. So it is being designed as the wait area for any future public transit, or even if kids have to wait for their school bus. The light imprint stormwater. The applicant is also proposing a bike share program. They're going to get bicycles and paint them a special color and leave them there for anyone to use. Again, trying to encourage people to take alternate modes of transportation, particularly since there's so many things you can access. And this coupled with the fact that people, usually in age-restricted communities, are trying to cut down costs. I mean, literature shows us that it's more of a one-car household than a two-car household when you're retired. So between the proximity to these areas, the bike share, the lower requirement of car usage from the 25% apartments, we believe that the ratio of parking that is being proposed is more than adequate. And I'll get to that in one more second. The applicant is also proposing 4 vehicle charging stations, 2 on the north side and 2 on the south side. I believe that most PUDs are committing to having the wiring prepared for. They're going to put them in there again because they understand they're bringing density. They understand that they have to provide on their end all the means to truly have, encourage other means of mobility. An encouragement of the list is universal design elements. Because this is rental, you're mandated to follow the Fair Housing Act Design Manual, which requires that every unit is essentially prepared in the case that you had to convert those for accessibility issues. Not every bathroom needs to be ADA, but every bathroom is dimensioned for ADA. So it's a lot harder to design in that manner. But every single unit is prepared. And again, the at-grade road makes the entire project ADA accessible. The architecture and the positioning lends itself so that there's always one side of shade. This is oriented north-south, which is the sustainable way so that you have the least impact of direct sun, but enough lighting and enough shade, which again is an encouragement of PUDs for public benefit. And so with that, I mean, I do have all sorts of images of plans and floor plans, but I'm happy to ask you any questions and to answer you any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few comments. I think that the sort of trade-offs make sense to me, but because the applicant is asking for quite a few exceptions, I'd like to see the city get a little bit more out of it. So I was going to ask for electric charging, but that's already done, so that's wonderful. My other main concern is that a lot of the open space and green space, while incredibly beautifully designed, is parking lots and a road. And while I'm not opposed to that, I think that something that we might ask for is particularly on Central to have the plantings be more mature trees so that we're not waiting many years to have that all be filled out. And I think that that'll also, make it a lot more attractive for people moving by. And then the other, what was the other thing that I had to say?
Well, you think Central is a city street, so we could plant the median too, right?
Yeah. So will that's actually my other
If
question.
it is county, then we may have to follow other distance rules. I don't know what kind of a street, it is a city street.
Uh-huh. So,
City maintained, county owned? Oh,
I think there's a
Okay.
portion of Central that goes into the county that's county, but that area right there is city. And in fact, when it was the lofts, the applicant back at that day had actually dedicated the right-of-way to the city for the crossroad of the Willoughby extension. They didn't dedicate it to the county as a result of that.
oh, okay.
yeah.
Well, good, yeah, so
So I
it's
think
totally feasible. Yeah.
Mature shade trees on the right-of-way. And then the other question that I have is a crosswalk. Is there going to be some kind of lighted crosswalk? Because especially if people are going to that pool and there's kids and a throughway, that's a pretty dangerous section to
So
not
it
have
is,
something.
and that's a great point, and I think that at one point, we discussed not just a crosswalk, but an entire treatment of the section of road, but from here to here, whether it's just colored concrete or something, and a crossing. We're happy to sit with staff and discuss improvement to transition from one side to the other and to, improve that address, that piece of Central, absolutely. At this point, we didn't target the city-owned right-of-way, but yes, I think it's totally doable. That's great, thank you, I like that.
Sure, yeah.
Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, I have a lot. Well, you're asking for doubling the density, so we're going from 15 to 30, which is a lot.
If you could talk to the microphone, so I
Sorry.
think people online have to.
Okay, is that better? Does that work? Okay, so we're asking for doubling the density. That's a lot, right? So I'm having a hard time with that one. My next thing is the promise of accessing the trail. You only have 1.3 parking spaces per unit. Where will those people who want to go through that trail park?
So I can go back to the density first,
Okay.
too. And I mean, some of you have heard me say this before. I am an advocate for density in the right place. I am an advocate for once we disturb the land, we disturb it correctly in that place. LEED is a very important organization that, is the leader in our nation about sustainability. And LEED ND, LEED Neighborhood Design, talks about the fact that the minimum sustainable density to actually support any type of future transit is 32 units to the acre. And it's not 32 just on this parcel, it would be 32 on an area wide if in the future we look, and now, I get it, look, I don't want to get lynched leaving the city, and Marcella said the whole city has to go to 32 units to the acre. However, I mean, again, what are those places in the city that we really, looking forward, and I know it's hard to look 10, 20 years down the road, I'm a planner, I've spent my entire life doing comp plans, for the next 50 years. We're between two bus lines that we're struggling as a community to have ridership on. And this could be, by adding very simple facilities, begin to support the ridership in those buses that we're all putting in. But most importantly, I mean, individual buildings just in our backyard, just in the Potsdam area, are 35, 38, 40, 42. So as you know, it's about design. Yes, more density brings more cars, brings more people. Less density doesn't guarantee a smaller building, as we saw. It was a bigger building that was all auto-oriented and auto-driven with absolutely no possibility to look at a more sustainable future. On the second issue, we are dedicating some parking spaces, but this is a city-owned park and a city-owned property. And I am assuming that if the city considered this trail important enough, we could augment the parking that is there for the dog run and the dog park and connect those a little better. So you could come and park either in our property or the city park and
But
take
how
the
do
trail.
you see what you're doing as an asset for the city? Because I just see a road that dead ends into a building.
This is
And-
this is all green. It would be the beginning, all this.
But
right
think
here.
about it, I'm going to be driving down Central Parkway, and I'm going to be going to the end of that road, and then what am I going to do?
So you would be going, and we would be applying, Jackie said, and we would probably be able to turn here as opposed to
maybe
you
not.
turn.
Yeah, you'd
And
have to-
there's parking spaces all along here. These are not dedicated spaces. You could park here, go on a trailhead. This is part of the landscaped area with native vegetation that we are replanting that Mr. Reitz talked about. And this is city-owned, and if there were a trailhead right here, you could park, get your bike, and possibly enjoy that green. If you wanted to come here, again, we're not forcing anyone to come, but it's
No,
a
I would
project that
love
is
to go all the way
allowing
down Poppleton Creek.
others, right, I mean,
But,
it's interesting, this, there's a pretty hard cut here with the county-owned, with the unincorporated county land here. All these people could come and ride, and essentially, if we gate this one and this one is gated, everything is essentially cut off from that amazing feature. I mean, it would be this donut. The design, we can't guarantee people are going to use it, but the design is thinking about the opportunity to create a nature-urban connection that this project doesn't negate but kickstart.
So are you going to put in some of the trail into the Poppleton Creek area?
I don't know that the city even has,
No.
right, they have nothing
So
right
the only
now.
thing we're
On top of
getting,
that, even if they offered to do it, it would likely be that the city would kindly accept a financial gesture if that was their case, but we would do that ourselves because it requires DEP permits and South Florida water management permits. It's a conservation area, it's a protected area, so it's a very,
It's difficult to do, but the thing that could be done here is if you put a trailhead and put a water fountain, and a little map and things that you couldn't do further in because you don't have utilities.
but we're doubling the density, lowering the parking. What else are we doing? You're getting, instead of a 25-foot buffer, you're getting a 15-foot buffer. And with one more?
Well, and that buffer, let me just rephrase that. Had we had any native vegetation, even a little speckle
Right.
of native vegetation, the setback would have been 15 feet as opposed to 25 of native landscaping. We had our environmental people out there. There's, hard to believe, but there's zero native vegetation there. So that doubles the requirement, not doubles, adds 10 feet of requirement of recreating this native environment, man-made. So had we had any, we would have respected that and maintained the 15. So it's unusual that this kicks in.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of density.
Yes, I agree. The density is very severe, and I really studied the parking, and I can't make sense of it, because how can you have 32 bedrooms and still it's just one parking space? And to my calculation, I would see that you would need at least 314 parking spaces, because you would need to have at least 2 for the 3 bedrooms and maybe 1.6 as you were proposing for the 2 bedrooms. And I would say maybe 1.5 for the 1 bedrooms. And your guest parking currently, you're offering 1 parking guest space for 40 residents per the calculation here. And that is not, I don't see how that could be reasonable. So where's the quality of life? Because you're saying people could park and utilize the area, but where are they going to park? If the public is going to use it, I really don't see the functionality of the space.
And I agree. The 1.6 ratio that was mentioned by staff, I think really stems from developments that have been approved in locations that are really auto-oriented locations. I believe that was over by Walmart on US 1 and on Indian Street and Canner. None of those projects had the composition of 25, a quarter of those units dedicated to an age group that, again, the literature is showing us really use less cars, try to, cut down costs. They're mostly on fixed income, and so usually cutting down to one car is there. This is a project that cannot spill out onto neighboring streets. So if it, usually the problem of approving a project with very little parking is that you're going to start bothering the neighbors, because if there's no parking, people are going to be parking on properties next door. We did think about the possibility that 5 years down the road, I don't know, we all misread the technology and we can't get balanced mobility to work. This property is surrounded by, let me just get back to an aerial quickly. I just want to see if I can get to an aerial here. So everything around this property is commercial development, which is buildings in a sea of asphalt. However, the benefit of that is that all those office uses are used from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Should this in the future, fail, it's something that we could come back and do the same thing the city does with parking lots in town for the shared parking ratio, and lease parking spaces from them. I mean, those properties are not going to be going anywhere. So,
But I can't see how we can approve something on the idea that you might be able to get a lease with the neighboring parking
no,
lot.
you're not, I think it either could be a condition in the PUD, that if parking fails, and the problem with a rental community or with any community, when parking fails, is people leave. If you can't park, you don't rent there. It's not, again, something that is impacting city streets. Nobody can park on the street here. And it's also, it used to be that the high parking standards were driven, yes, by suburban zoning regulations, but they were also driven by financing. It used to be that if banks didn't see a 1.5 ratio of parking per unit, not 1.6, not 2.5, if they didn't see that, they wouldn't provide financing. That has changed completely, because, the whole notion of where we are going, not where we are today, but where we're going. And I understand it's hard to think forward a little bit.
Well, I mean, I love to look futuristically myself, but aesthetically, I am having a problem at the 4 level in that location, and being that it's right to the drive on Central Park. It just, I don't know, there's just something about it. It's aesthetically, I don't think it works, the 4 level in that area also.
It was approved for 4 stories.
Yeah,
of
but I'm
course.
just
So the
looking at it
current
and-
approval is a 4-story.
It's very dense. I mean, that created the additional density also, and for the parking, I don't see how it's.
Okay, can we go to public comment?
Before we get to public comment, I need to make a couple of comments. Number one, I'm not sure how many of those ollies Ms. Campbell is going to donate, but that could probably solve the parking too. The ollies from Orlando that you pointed out that were going to be part of the project. And secondly, there was some discussion during her presentation about the fact that Central Parkway was originally commercial. First, it should be noted that it was commercial and contemplated for multifamily. Multifamily is compatible with commercial. It's not like putting a hippopotamus in a duck pond. It's actually contemplated that the two are compatible uses. So when you hear it saying commercial to residential, in multifamily worlds, more than 5 units are considered commercial. So that falls in the same compatibility, and staff didn't comment on that because it's their opinion that it is compatible. Your comments are all well taken or whatever, and they're not anything different than that. I just wanted to point out that the multifamily use rather than a true commercial business is really not any different.
Chair? Chair, if I could add to that, the underlying future land use, and we always look at how the proposal interacts with the comprehensive plan And we get caught up in saying that's a doubling of the density or it's an increase in density. If we go back to the comprehensive plan, that actually foresees and permits up to 30 units per acre. The safeguard to that is that that has to be approved by the city commission. So it's not actually a doubling of density, it's an approval of a density which is allowed. And that's really the complexity of the system that we run in the city when we move into a planned unit development scenario. So
But that's a maximum allowed.
it's the maximum allowed.
Not necessarily what should go on a site.
But it's what is, yeah,
The maximum.
you're correct, but the future land use foresees that it would be that way, and the city's services and the city's planning is based on those numbers.
Thank you.
Could I just say something about the density? I think it's a dirty word in Martin County, but something that we don't often want to talk about is the fact that we have a total housing crisis here, which is making this into a community that doesn't really have a future unless we find a way to solve that problem. And I think that smart density is, for me, the way to solve the problem. Now, this is certainly a more extreme version of that, but I think that it's, we need to put these houses somewhere. We need to have more people living in the city of Stuart, and clearly they don't want it on St. Lucie Boulevard. Nobody wants densing in their neighborhood, but if we develop our city based on NIMBYism, then we're just not gonna have a future.
Okay. Robin Cartwright?
Good evening, Robin Cartwright, 703 Southeast Hibiscus. Yes, I am a City of Stuart resident, moved over from the county, just so I could attend these meetings. I'd like one point of clarification, though, before I get my 3 minutes to start, please. Is it the 80% of the, is it only one-bedrooms that are being considered for this property that are being considered for the additional financial assistance for housing?
That's the way the condition is worded at the moment, but there's nothing to prevent that applying to any type of unit.
I understand.
So the AMI would change depending on the bedroom numbers of those units, and that if there's a suggestion from the LPA, a recommendation that it should apply to a variety of units, then we would insert a condition that would address that.
So I would like to address the financial aspect of things. I'm completely against everything that everybody mentioned with regards to the density. I get that building up takes less water, it takes less land space, I get that. I agree that we have a housing crisis, and I'm glad that you brought that up, but I would like to address specifically the type of housing that we need in Martin County. As a result of living in White Marsh, I was made aware of the project that's going on with Costco, being built on Canner Highway, running through to Willoughby. And as a result, it created an opportunity for me and some others to do our due diligence about what housing looks like in Martin County. So using the number that was mentioned in the presentation of $1,041 a month for rent, that doesn't include utilities. If you take the annual salary of a person in Martin County who needs to be able to survive in the city of Stuart and in Martin County as a whole, using the Port St. Lucie numbers that also come into that matrix, one person needs to make $19.85 an hour, working a full 40 hours a week, in order to be able to pay for the rent and utilities. Therefore, their rent and utilities would be $1,032. The number of people that need housing that are on the waiting list currently for the city of Stuart and for Martin County is ridiculous. We have nowhere to put them. I agree completely. We have a severe housing shortage, but we don't have any affordable housing. So I appreciate that projects are coming in where we're going to build currently 10 projects that have been looked at in a silo with regards to traffic studies, with regards to what rent should look like. If you take the project that's going at the base of the bridge, the Veterans Bridge, we don't need that many units in a mixed-use property saying that we have affordable housing. We don't. We have housing that is attracting people from the south and from the north to move here because we have a great quality of life. However, what we're not doing is we're not addressing the need for the people who need to live where we currently are. There should be a focus on emergency short-term housing, transitional housing, workforce housing, and affordable housing. And what we're not doing is we're not accommodating the volume of lower income earners who need a place to live. And I think, as we've all seen as a result of the COVID crisis, we have a large, large number of people who work in our restaurant industries, who work in our local businesses, who are not making $19 an hour. And that is the Martin County number. That is higher than most of the state of Florida. So the city needs to grow, I get that, but it's not in alignment with what is needed. The city's website specifically states that the citizens of the city are its shareholders, and the city is basically selling its stock short to be able to accommodate builders who want to make a profit. And in order to make a profit, they need to sell the land, they need to have rental opportunities that produce a certain amount of income. I get that it creates a tax base for the city, I understand the purpose of it, but it doesn't serve the people who are here.
Miss Linda K. Richards?
Good evening. Welcome to your first board meeting. It appears to be an interesting one. My name is Linda K. Richards. I am not a resident of the city of Stuart. My zip code is 34994. I live right on the border of where the city has annexed in so much land. I'm here to talk about the housing explosion that is currently happening in the city of Stuart. You guys think that there's not enough housing? As you see from the handout, there's 9 approved projects and 2 pending, okay? And I don't believe people are looking at the cumulative effect of all of these projects. So not including Watermark, which is in North Stuart, all of these projects are located within a 3-mile radius. Hidden Key, Central Park Lofts, Canner CUPD, and Bridgeview are all on Canner Highway within less than a mile and a half of each other. Harbor Grove, Trillium, Springtree are all on US 1 about just over a mile from each other, okay? In the pipeline, there are 1,298 units already approved to be built, with 396 proposed, which you guys will see soon, is what the Canner CUPD is asking, and that includes 2 restaurants, retail, drive-through, and a Costco. And then there's these 196 units that are up for discussion right now. From a population standpoint, based on using the 2.6 persons per unit, which is what the housing uses, that's nearly 5,000 new people living here. That's 30% of today's population. How can we handle this type of growth? Our schools, they are already at capacity. Is the city going to build new schools? Are they going to expand what we have? Or are we just going to see a degradation of our good education system? Our roads, they're already crowded. How are we going to handle 4,000 more cars living in the city? That's 4,000 new parking spots in these projects that have been approved. That's 4,000 new cars living in our city. Okay? What's the overall environmental impact of all of these cumulative effects on these projects? Relocation of wildlife, runoff pollution into our already fragile river system, light pollution, noise pollution. Just finally, what about our quality of life? What about the people who live here already? Everything I mentioned directly affects the quality of life to every resident of Stuart and the Martin County areas that are around Stuart. Schools, traffic, environment, noise, light, safety. We're not preserving our quaint seaside town by cramming multi-family 4-story buildings at every turn. Just because 1,000 people want to move to the state of Florida every day does not mean it's our responsibility to give up our quality of life, our environment, our small town. The city of Stuart needs growth. It needs smart growth. Do we want to be more urban? Do we want to have 4-story buildings, 5-story buildings, because that's going to come next? I don't see how we can sustain these projects. I am asking you, as the LPA, to look at all of these projects cumulatively, and then move forward with your decisions on the density, even though it is a bad word in your vocabulary, that the city is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Barbara DeGrasse.
Hello, and thank you for letting me share. I just want to agree with what both the girls said. I live in the county of Stewart, Martin County, out west, but I am a business owner in downtown Stewart here. I have to drive down Canner Highway every day to go to work. And the density in this area and the traffic has caused the traffic to be, even with the 4 lanes now. This young lady back here was talking about bicycle paths and riding downtown. I don't see if that it's even safe enough to ride bikes with all these vehicles. So I kind of feel like I'm out of my element. This is the first time I've spoken in front of people before in this type of capacity, but I'm passionate about the growth in our community, and I love my community where I live. And I would just hope that you would take into consideration more of a slower type growth and let things be considerate of those of us that do live here. Thank you.
Okay, we have Luke Latham.
Good evening, I'm Luke Latham. I've lived in the estates at Stewart for the past 10 years and recently moved into Seaside by Meritage, the building that's going to be butting up against that. First of all, I'd just like to say that there's this Central Parkway Dog Park, which is a great place, and there's also a beautiful walking path around that pond. You can make a whole loop around that area, which a lot of families like to use, and it's a nice, quaint, quiet area for people to get away in Stewart. I have a bunch hodgepodge of comments. The site currently is not barren. I'm not a biologist. I don't know what exotic species versus indigenous species are there. There are some beautiful trees there currently. This comment probably doesn't matter much, but there's no detached homes in Meritage Seaside. They're all townhomes. As far as Central Parkway, there's a need regardless of whether they build or not for pedestrian-friendly sidewalks. Currently, it's not safe to walk down there. There's sidewalk-free areas going east towards the businesses, and you definitely wouldn't want to go down there at night without a sidewalk. Lastly, I think the comment the lady brought up about a Poppleton Creek path is excellent. I know if you look at the dog park, there's some faded signs talking about developing that area. It's a beautiful area and should be utilized smartly, perhaps a safe trail. And lastly, there was a comment about possibly increasing parking around by the dog park or something else to accommodate a trailhead. That dog park parking lot is full all times of the day. I'm not sure exactly how that would work out. And just would like you guys to consider just the quality of life for the residents around there, and that's a beautiful, quiet area. I don't know, there's a lot of beautiful birds and animals in that area, and I hope we can keep those. Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions they would like to ask?
I don't have a card, but I'll gladly fill one out. Good evening and welcome to the show, I used to say. I live in the new Seaside townhomes, and if you would...
What is your name?
Michael Streff, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
356 Southeast Sea Hunt Way. If you look at the surrounding area to the west of where this new development's at, all the townhomes in that area are all 2 stories. There's no 4-story, and actually it kind of looks like there could be even a 5th story on that building on some of the stairwells. So that particular building is not in, I would say, in agreement with the architecture that's already existing in that area. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want this expectation of me walking. I was here if there were any other questions, but I just, while I'm here and I generated the expectation, I can add that, this is a staff recommendation for approval to move forward to the commission, and it is a PUD. And, I understand that if there are specific things that you want to recommend to improve the project, we're, like was said, we're happy to entertain, what those could be.
So today, we would be approving the changes to the PUD and also at the same time, their PUD itself. Is that correct?
It's a PUD. It's confusing to say it's changes to a PUD. It is,
The old PUD is just really rescinding, so it's not doing anything to the old PUD.
So this is really a brand-new PUD.
It's a
It has
PUD.
nothing to do with the 15, nothing
We
at
call
all.
it amended just so that the title search shows that that one isn't still in existence.
right.
Okay,
It's
so
a PUD consistent with a comp plan.
because Lee Roberts isn't here anymore, I feel like I have to, sort of take you to task. And I really do not see how people are going to cross Central Parkway to go to that pool.
Right, and I think the recommendation of addressing that center, doing crosswalks, maybe doing cuts,
I
we're
mean,
happy
I
to do
go
this.
on Central Parkway a lot, and, it's 40 mile an hour. I mean, it's a wonderful road to drive on, fast.
Well, it's not posted 40 miles an hour.
Absolutely, but I am one of the ones who don't follow it as well as most people, right? I mean,
You're right.
hey,
Yeah,
I
I
already
mean,
got
look, as much as I appreciate it, and my husband got 2 tickets in 2 weeks.
there you go.
It's not a valid, I mean, I'm a believer that we have not designed our streets correctly, and that when we have an opportunity to traffic calm and to do things better,
Well, we
it
did
should. I mean, the
design it-
curvilinear nature of Central Parkway, I believe, was intended to slow traffic down, and the fact that right,
Yeah.
and so we can rise it. East Ocean used to be a speedway.
Right, but we did
you know,
not
and-
design.
And so was Colorado.
We did not design this road to be crossed, to go to to split a development in half with a pool on one side and houses on the other either.
Okay,
So you have a
so-
big problem there, I think. Density is still my problem. I think you're asking for a lot more density than, what's the density at Seaside?
Seaside Townhomes is much lower because it's townhomes, and it's fee simple townhomes. The 60s, I think it's 80 units on 7 acres or.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're comparing apples and oranges. I agree. All I'm saying is, what can we do to improve it? And we could say 28, 24, 26. I'm just, I am, not
So
for
for me
playing.
to be happy, I would say 24 units per acre. I would say 1.6 parking spaces per unit. I would say that you have to deal with that road going to across. And those are my biggest problems.
Okay. So, I mean, something we can definitely look into if it is an issue. As a planner, I have a hard time understanding a number of density right there, but I understand that your concern is somewhat lowering the density,
Yeah.
right? And then the other things that are, okay.
And for me, in addition to the parking, I like the first presenter's statement that it truly is not offering enough to affordable housing, really. Because in the presentation that I reviewed online, it said 20, and then I subsequently heard, I don't know if you
It's
misspoke, but you said 10.
10% of the units, which is 20 units.
And if I could just chime in, it's great to have the conversation about affordable housing, but if you do consider doing motions, there's a state law that prohibits us from conditionalizing an approval on affordable housing. It was passed in, I think, late 2019, but they've offered this, and we can negotiate it and discuss the need, but it can't be, I move approval conditioned upon X number of units of affordable housing. It can be, I move approval on 1.6 parking spaces, and since you're throwing in that affordable housing, that's great too, but it can't just be conditioned on that.
Could we say, though, for example, well, I don't approve now, but if you came back with 15%, then I would approve? Is that possible?
My understanding is that when the local government requested, you have to make the developer whole for the difference that they're not making, and that's state statute. That's not us. So the developer will come and say, sure, you want 45? The difference of rent you have to pay me, which has put every local government, I straddle the line and I do a lot of work for local government. So 10% is pretty unusual 5% is what most developments offer. We've gone to 10%, again, because we do believe that there will be a lot of teachers, a lot of people working in that area. We believe in quick absorption, and honestly, a lot of what's been going on in the list of many things that have been approved, if you recall, Ms. De La Vega, they're all talking about high-quality, high-end rental apartments. This is high quality, and it's the first one that is committing to mixed income, mixed age, in a true community, and double the percentage that is normally.
I really like that. And
I think it's important to mention, not that it matters one way or the other, but some of the public comment related to the Martin County rate and what the calculation is for that. Our development department, Mr. Freeman and Mr. Reeds, brought forward comp plan amendments to the city commission. The city commission instructed them to amend the definitions to more suit the city as it related to what's workforce housing, what's affordable housing, et cetera. And when we sent those comp plan amendments to Tallahassee, they rejected them and said we weren't allowed to do that and sent them back. So those numbers we tried to modify that, and it got, not I didn't, the city commission did. So the city tried to modify that just literally last November. It got rejected.
Marcella, can we, and the other thing that would be great to see is that it wasn't just one bedroom apartments, but that there were the 2 bedrooms.
That was a condition suggested by the city. Sure. It doesn't really matter because the rent for a 2-bedroom is more than the rent for, it's not like it's a fixed price whether you take a 3-bedroom or a 1-bedroom.
Okay.
And like I said, with density, we hear you. I'm not comfortable throwing a number and saying the number you said is the one that works.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying,
Could we take this to the next meeting? Could we see what changes you bring, and then?
Yeah, you can certainly continue to the next meeting. However, you have a couple different options. You can continue to the next meeting, meaning that if this were to come to a vote, it wouldn't be approved, or you could approve it with conditions, and those conditions would be 1.6 parking spaces, consider less density, put in crosswalks. It's however comfortable you feel doing that.
So we need a motion is what we need, and then we need to vote on it, and then we would.
Yeah, so does somebody want to make the motion?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I make a motion that we, except I don't have the words for it, that you come back and see with the changes to 24 units per acre, the parking, anyone keeping up with me?
Crosswalk.
The crosswalk.
So it's interesting that you can either motion to continue it and have them return, but you can't conditionalize it.
Okay.
Or you can motion to approve it,
with the conditions.
conditionalized on 24 units an acre, a crosswalk, the landscaping, the parking, and all the stuff. So you guys have told them what you think. It's, it doesn't take rocket science to hear a word, what they're saying. So if you were to continue it, you couldn't conditionalize it, but it'd be likely that they'd take some of the things you took in mind into consideration. Or you could also deny it based upon the facts that you disagree with the density or you disagree with whatever it is you disagree with. And that would be that. And they would have to, go to the commission with denial or revise their plan or whatever.
Okay.
So which motion would you like to make?
Does anyone else want to make a motion? I motion that we approve. Tell me what to say, Mike.
I'm sorry?
Help me here.
Yes, if you have conditions, then you have to motion to approve or
right.
deny.
If to have conditions, you have to approve or deny. Well, deny is no conditions because it's denial. But if you to put conditions on it, you have to motion to approve, because it's kind of a offer and acceptance. We'll approve it if you'll agree to these conditions.
Okay. I motion to approve with the conditions that you bring it to 24 units per acre, the deal with the crosswalk going across there, and deal with the parking of 1.6 per unit.
And landscaping,
And what?
and mature landscaping on right
Oh,
of ways.
and mature landscaping along the, along Central Parkway.
Okay. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Do you need to record
Yes.
individually? Okay.
Board Member Vitale,
I approve.
Chair Lorraine,
I approve.
Vice Chair De La Vega,
I approve.
Board Member Bromfield.
I do not approve.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we,
Oh, is there any further public comment, I think?
okay, is there any further public comment for the evening?
You are allowed.
Please make a comment.
Oh.
You never did. We didn't have anyone, thankfully.
Oh.
Good. Good news story there. Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, does the staff have an update?
He's gonna come to the microphone and give his public comment.
Oh, he's gonna give us, you do have, you individually have a public comment. Fantastic.
But when we asked for public comment and he didn't raise his hand, that's not your fault, that's it.
Yeah. no,
Got
it's
it.
fine. I don't know what I'm can and can't do. So, my name's Paul Sandstrom. I don't live in Stewart, but I pretty much grew up here. I work here. I just live in Jensen, 3160 Northwest Arrowwood Lane. As a 23-year-old who lives with his parents still, and I fall into that bracket of people who are looking to live in this kind of development, right? It's supposed to be older people, workforce, and then young people. I'll be the first to tell you, there's no way I'm going to afford to live anywhere in Stewart or Jensen, really. And that's not because developers aren't really doing their jobs. I don't mean in that way. It's just, it's Jensen Beach and it's Stewart. All of my high school friends live in Port St. Lucie or not near here anymore because you just can't afford it. And like what Ms. Vitale, you brought up of saying we have a housing crisis. It's a housing crisis, not in that we don't have enough houses, it's just we don't have houses for people who are growing up here to live. I don't have the answer to that. I do IT. So I don't know the answer to that.
No.
But I do know I used to deliver flowers for my mom, and a huge portion of the people who live in Stewart and the unincorporated Martin County area around Stewart don't live here. They are snowbirds or they are retirees, which is fine. But we keep, like you brought up, we keep wanting more and more houses, more and more houses. But at what point are we just building houses for people who don't live here to just buy them and move in, rather than people to grew up here like me? I grew up here. I never want to leave. People keep telling, I want to go to live in Orlando. No, thank you. I want to stay here. But where can I stay? Other than staying with my parents until they politely ask me to leave. But
You have to build a cottage in the backyard.
well, yeah. Well, I joke about that, and that's kind of one of the concerns is,
Multi-generational housing.
yeah. But bar from being blessed to be able to, stay with your parents as long as you can with a minimal rent, and to secure a well-paying job quickly to save up to be able to get, to me personally, I don't ever want to rent. I want to own a home. But if I have to rent, I have to rent. But some cases rent's $1,400. Even if I split that with someone, it's $700 for both of us, and it's a one-bedroom place. So, but that's just my comments about it.
And we, you know what, we all agree.
Thank you very
with
much.
yours.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate that.
I can chime in and say to you that the commission has had several workshops and several presentations, and Kevin's done presentations, and the sum and summary of it is that the city commission did not approve any multifamily apartments for in excess of a decade, and as a result, there's a housing crisis. But there's also studies that show that if you build 400 units and they're $1,500 a month, but they're brand spanking new and they're perfect, the people that are right now living in the 1978 apartment with no pool for $1,350 or $1,400 a month will move to those 1,500s, but now the guy that owns the 78 apartments that don't have the pool can only get 1,100, and his rent actually goes down over time just on straight market force and capital principles. And you know, the problem is everything is some kind of litmus test, and you don't get to know up front, so it's complicated to figure out how it works.
And just to add, if Paul can find somebody to share with, you can get a 2-bedroom, this new development at $1,200 a month, and I'm sure $600 each is not too
Where is
much of a
that?
stretch.
At the one,
This one we just approved. Yeah.
oh, the one tonight is 1,200 a month?
That would be,
A 2-bedroom?
yes. That's what they were offering is
As for the
as
workforce?
the workforce.
But
So a
but
2-bedroom is just over $1,200 a month. So 2 people
That's amazing.
could quite easily share one of those.
But there's only,
600,
how many? 16?
yeah,
But then you don't have any parking.
right.
How much would each of these units end up being? Because the workforce.
I'm going to give you this.
Okay, do I make a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all in favor for that. So you just make your motion and then all in favor.
All in favor?
All in favor, yay.
Aye.
Fantastic.
Meeting adjourned, thank you.
Now I have to go do homework.